Chapter 1287. Under the moonlight, there was a stunned Pang Zhijing. I may be a little silly, but I'm not stupid. You spoke so weakly earlier, I'm not deaf. When she discovered him, she felt that there was something wrong with him, but because of what he said, she was so angry that her heart was in pain, so she didn't take this into consideration. But when she left the courtyard, her mood calmed down a little. Then she remembered his weak and frail appearance standing by the wall, as if a gust of wind would take him away. Her heart ached slightly, and she couldn't care less about those vicious words she said earlier, as she turned around and ran back. Even if she came back perfectly fine, she wasn't afraid that he would laugh at her. Compared to her own face, she was more concerned about whether he was well or not. In this way she could leave in peace. But at this moment, when she saw him walking out from the shadows, his exposed skin was covered in cold sweat, and his face was also covered in cold sweat. His cheeks were suspiciously red, and his lips were even redder than usual. She couldn't help but suspect if he was sick, and couldn't help but go up to support him. While Xiao, who was caught in an unexpected surprise, when she came close, his face sunk. "Don't come over again." Although his tone was strict, but that light voice didn't have any deterrence at all. And at this moment, to Pang Zhijing, whose health was more important than anything else, this time her skin was extremely thick. No matter how he chased her away, she refused to leave. She walked in front of him, and from such a close distance, she discovered that his entire body was covered in cold sweat, but he was emitting hot air, as if he was in a dual world of ice and fire. Her first thought was that he was having a fever, and her heart was extremely anxious, as she immediately stretched out her hand to support him into the room, and then help him find a doctor. However, when her hand touched his sleeve, it was flung away by him. "Don't touch me." He was almost unable to control himself, and the her in front of him was like a fragrant rabbit, making him want to swallow her into his stomach. So the only thing he could do now was to stay far away from her. "You." Pang Zhijing's heart turned cold. Had he hated her to this extent? He didn't even let her touch him. However, what happened next stunned her. Looking at the blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, she could not help but tear up. Xiao noticed her strange behavior, and couldn't take another step forward. He turned sideways and reached out to wipe away the tears on her face. "Why are you crying? Be good." But before his hand could touch her face, he saw the fresh blood stains on his sleeve. He guessed that he had vomited blood again. But he had vomited too much along the way, so he was already numb to it. It was not as painful as the surging heat in his body. Since she had already found out, he had nothing to hide. "I'm injured, but it's not serious. You can go back. I'll take care of it myself." However, as soon as he finished speaking, his body swayed slightly, as if he was going to collapse in the next moment. How could this not be serious? If it was serious, wouldn't he have immediately reported to hell? This time, she didn't care about him. She pulled his arm over her shoulder, and half dragged and half carried him into the room. "You, shut up." Xiao wanted to say something, but was stopped by her two words. He went into a blank. This was the first time in so many years that someone dared to use such a nasty tone to order him. But he couldn't get angry. Instead, he felt that she was exceptionally adorable. "If you say another word, I'll sew your mouth shut with a needle. Let's see if you can still treat me this badly." Worried that he would say something nasty again, she immediately took action and threatened him fiercely. Xiao couldn't help but curved his eyes. This was the first time he saw her using his power to intimidate others. But he didn't have any strength left, and was unable to make her leave. He would just let her be. When they entered the room, he would find a reason to lure her away. Pang Zhijing didn't know what he was thinking and thought that he had compromised. She heaved a sigh of relief and threw herself into dragging him. But at such a close distance, it could be said that his entire body was leaning on her. That scorching hot breath spilled onto her face, ears and neck, causing her breathing to become hurried. Slightly lowering her head, she could see that his collar was open, that lean chest and... No, he was a patient. How could she let her imagination run wild? She felt ashamed of her thoughts at this moment. Feeling that he was very uncomfortable, she immediately retracted her thoughts. She didn't dare let her imagination run wild as she struggled and persisted to bring him forward. Although he was on the verge of fainting, his mind was still a bit clear. His eyes could see her panting and clenching her teeth as she persevered. His gaze couldn't help but soften. It seemed like he had never looked at her this closely before. The room was just inches away, but his eyes slowly darkened. Even her appearance was slowly drowned in the darkness. Xiao, don't sleep. Wake up. Feeling the weight on her body sink, she found that he had closed his eyes and his breathing had become weak. Her heart suddenly panicked, and her words began to tremble. She didn't know where the strength came from, but she quickened her steps and brought him into the room. Then she placed him flat on the bed. At this time, his face was flushed and his body was hot. She hurriedly found a wash basin and cloth to draw water for him to wipe his face. But after wiping for a while, his body temperature didn't decrease. Instead, it increased. Her heart became even more flustered. The entire courtyard was quiet, and beside her was the unconscious him. In an instant, it felt like the sky was falling down. In the darkness, Xiao felt like he was in a furnace. It was as if his entire body was about to be swallowed. Too tired, too painful. His will to live was slowly swallowed up. However, a voice came from a distant place. It was like a clear spring water that poured over his body, allowing him to regain some clarity in an instant. He slowly opened his eyes. After adapting to the light, he saw the person lying on top of him crying uncontrollably. In his eyes, there was a trace of pity. Why are you crying? Peng Zhijing felt a gentle force on her head. She couldn't help but raise her head with tears in her eyes and met his gentle eyes. She was stunned for a moment before she cried out with a wah sound. You scared me to death. I thought you would never wake up again. I searched the entire courtyard just now, but there was no one. I walked around the courtyard once, but there was no one. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to find me when you woke up. I was also afraid that you would never wake up again. I didn't dare to leave you for too long, so I could only come back. But seeing your breathing become weaker and weaker, I was so scared, so scared. The young girl in front of him pounced on him and hugged him tightly. She cried her heart out. Xiao felt that a certain part of his heart had instantly softened, and his eyes were filled with tender love. Don't cry, I'm fine. However, the response he got was an even more heart-wrenching cry. Chapter 1288. She didn't know why, but seeing him lying there so weakly made her heart ache. Compared to his current state, she would rather see him scheming. At least he wouldn't look so lifeless, as though he would disappear at any moment. At this moment, a cold finger slid past the corner of her eye, brushing away her tears. It was gentle and pitiful. She looked at him with her red eyes, tears still rolling down her cheeks like beads from a broken necklace. He sighed softly and said helplessly, I don't usually see you cry so much. You cry like a rabbit. His words were still so vicious. She could tell that he wanted to make her happy, but his pale face and abnormal flushing face made her unable to feel happy at all. She grabbed his hand and asked anxiously, Did you catch a cold and have a fever? How can I help you? His fingers were held tightly in her palm, and he could feel her worry and fear. This warmed his heart, but he didn't know how to answer her. If it's not a fever, then I was accidentally drugged. It's not a big problem. Just let me stay in the room for a while. Peng Zhijing looked at his lowered eyelids and spoke very softly, as though he was trying to hide something. She harumphed and said, I don't believe you. You vomited blood just now. How can I just let you stay for a while? You're not a cat. You have 9 lives. It seemed that she wouldn't be able to fool him tonight. He panted lightly and said to her, There's medicine in the room. It's in the cabinet. It's a white bottle. Look for it and bring it to me. Hearing this, Peng Zhijing immediately stood up. Wait for a while. I'll bring it over quickly. As she spoke, she brushed aside the strands of hair on both sides of her face, and turned around to start rummaging. Half leaning against the bed wall, one hand barely supporting the bed, Xiao's gaze followed her movements. Seeing her frantically searching, he could feel that she was genuinely worried, nervous and afraid. He thought that after his mother passed away, no one would be as sincere as his mother to him. So for so many years, he had always sealed his heart and didn't let anyone get close to him. But somehow, This little rascal in front of him whose face was red from crying had walked into his heart. There were no signs at all. By the time they realized it, they were completely defenseless. If it wasn't for Yu Qingxi's words, he probably wouldn't have been able to face the thoughts in his heart. If it wasn't for the unfamiliar girl in the alley, perhaps he wouldn't have been able to see her position in his heart. Life was such a wonderful thing. Every time you discovered something, you were given a barrier that prevented you from speaking up and expressing your feelings. At this moment, looking at the person in front of him, he could only bury his words in his heart. If he couldn't make it through tonight, then he would take the secret in his heart into the coffin and never let her know. Can't find it, can't find it. Where is it? Can you hold on for a while? I'll get someone to get you a doctor. She turned her head to ask him in a panic. The more anxious she was, the more she couldn't do anything good. At this moment, she was in such a state. Her whole body was empty, and there was no fulcrum at all. Xiao comforted her. I can't let others see me like this. Take your time. It's in the innermost grid. She felt very ashamed to let a sick person like him comfort her in turn. She immediately nodded and stabilized her mind to continue searching. Because he had given the order, the subordinates didn't dare to come to his courtyard. That was why the little rascal couldn't find it when she went out for a walk. And his current state was simply unsuitable for others to see him. A long illness turned into a doctor. After so many years, he had also studied some illnesses. Just now when he took his own pulse, he found that this poison was very strange. Moreover, there were already signs of the poison flaring up. Other than the method Yu Qingxi mentioned, he was afraid that even if the gods came, they wouldn't be able to save him. He might as well let him leave in a more dignified manner. He should have tricked her away at this moment when he was battered and exhausted. But he couldn't bear to let her leave. He wanted to take a few more glances at her in this remaining time. So he used his remaining inner energy to seal all his acupoints, forcing the poison to one place to delay its flaring up. But this could only be maintained for a while and couldn't last long. Moreover, the longer he sealed his acupoints, the stronger the backlash would be. Found it, found it. At this moment, hearing her pleasantly surprised voice that was about to pierce through the roof, Xiao was called back from his thoughts. He saw her quickly running in front of him and handing him the water and medicine. She looked at him eagerly, urging him to quickly eat it. He nodded and took the medicine and poured a few pills into his mouth. After finishing the medicine, he said to her, I've already eaten this medicine. You'll get better in a while. It's already so late, you should go back first. Hearing him say that, she believed him and thought that he would really be cured after eating that medicine. Looking at his slightly rosy cheeks, she didn't think that he would use his life to lie to her. Thus she nodded. It was already very late after this torment. She had to go back so that she could successfully leave tomorrow. But just as she stood up, the person who was originally fine suddenly spat out a large mouthful of blood. It was even more ferocious than before. She stared blankly as his face rapidly paled, not knowing what to do. Didn't you say that I'll get better after eating the medicine? What's going on? Only then did she realize that he was lying to her. Xiao clutched his chest. He thought that he could delay for a while and let her leave without worry. But he didn't expect that he could no longer suppress the poison. The seal on his acupuncture points was broken through due to his lack of strength. Now he was powerless to stop the poison from spreading through his body at the fastest speed. You should go. I'm already beyond saving. He finally gave in to fate. His entire life leaned there helplessly, as if he had already lost his life force. Peng Zhijing stood there dumbfounded. When she came back to her senses, she pounced on him and grabbed his arm, shaking it hard. I don't believe it. What kind of poison is this? It's so fierce and overbearing. There must be another way. If there's really no other way, I'll go beg Qingyan and let her think of a way for us. Xiao shook his head with great effort. Don't waste any more time. It's useless. She felt that when she mentioned other ways, she felt his hand tremble slightly. Her eyes couldn't help but light up. He must be lying to her. No, you must have a way. Hurry and tell me. Just as she finished speaking, her entire body was suddenly pulled onto the bed by a force. Her back was pressed against the soft brocade quilt. and her front was enveloped by a wave of hot air. Following that, her lips were bitten by him, and he violently ravaged her mouth for a while before leaving. She opened her eyes and saw that he had fixed her on the bed. Looking down at her, she couldn't see his expression. She could only hear him panting beside her ear. "There's a way, but do you dare to give yourself to me?" Peng Zhijing's eyes widened. No wonder his entire body was burning up, and he didn't seem right. So it was because he was poisoned by this. "Since you don't want to, then go back." Seeing her reaction, Xiao let out a sigh of relief. He then pretended to ridicule her, and was about to let go. He was just scaring her earlier. However, when he was about to get up, a hand pulled his hand. Chapter 1289. Just as he was about to leave, her hand suddenly grabbed his arm. He was slightly stunned. Looking at her lowered eyes and helpless appearance, he did not move or speak. Because he did not know what she wanted to do. He could only remain silent. However, that pair of eyes hidden under her eyelids suddenly lifted up, timidly but bravely looking at him. "That is to say, if I want to save you, I have to do that like that?" He did not expect her to ask such a question, but he still nodded and said in a stiff tone, "This poison is similar to an aphrodisiac, but it's different from the one you brought over that day. It has a very strong toxicity, which is why it caused my breathing to become chaotic and my inner strength to drain, just like the scene you just saw." At this point, he no longer planned to hide it from her. Perhaps after knowing the truth, she would leave. He vomited blood twice, which was still vivid in her mind. Thinking about it now, she still felt a lingering fear and worry. After Xiao finished speaking, he felt her hand tremble slightly. He thought that she was afraid and laughed bitterly in his heart. Then he prepared to move away from above her. Perhaps this way, she would be able to leave. However, before he moved, he heard her say, "This is poison. That is an aphrodisiac. Are you sure this can cure the poison?" She was still an unmarried girl. When it came to intercourse between men and women, it would always be difficult for her to say it. However, she tried her best to say it, but when she said it, she did not dare to look at the person above her. Xiao did not know what she was thinking, because the heat in his body could not help but surge towards his lower abdomen. In order to fight against that surging desire, he did not have much time to analyze her thoughts at this time, and said in a low and hoarse voice, "That's what you think," she said, "but who knows? The blood of a virgin, hee. Maybe it was just used to deceive him, to make him beg for death in that restaurant. If his inner strength had not been sealed at that time, he would have finished him off with a single palm, and would not have let him be so free." Just as he was immersed in hatred, a voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Then it exploded in his ear, blowing him out of that angry and helpless world. "Well then, let's begin," she said as if she had suddenly gained courage, and her voice rose at last. However, for Xiao, this sentence brought him into an even more chaotic world. The heat and aura became even more chaotic. Did she know that her presence in front of him was already torture for him? Now her words had successfully pulled him into a whirlpool. He couldn't help but suck her in and make her sink with him. He took a deep breath and said with difficulty, "Don't mess around. Leave while I can still control myself. I can't guarantee that I won't hurt you when I lose control." She could tell that he was enduring a great deal of pain. The veins on his forehead were bulging as he clenched his teeth. He was a person with great self-control. She had no doubt about this since she met him. The amount of pain he was enduring right now was a testament to how potent the poison was. The so-called fear of hurting her when he lost control was actually because he was afraid that he would force himself on her. When she did not know that he was poisoned with this kind of poison, she had always been hovering in front of him like a moving antidote. But in order to not go against her wishes and not hurt her, he had always thought of ways to make her leave. Then he would quietly wait for death to come. Even at this point, he was still thinking of her. She suddenly felt that she did not know what words to use to describe her feelings for him at this moment. He was such a proud person. He would rather die than force her. But how did he know that he would force her? "It's okay, you can bully me." Her hand climbed up his arm and finally wrapped around his neck, hanging her entire body on him. "Do you know what you're doing?" Did she know the meaning of the word bully? The two of them were close to each other, which undoubtedly added a fire to his body. The lust in his body was even more vigorous. It was already very difficult to maintain his composure at this time. Hearing her words, he almost broke his cultivation. He bit his lip and hated iron for not becoming steel. She was not affected by his words at all. In her eyes, he was just a paper tiger. Even if she bullied him, he would not be able to fight back. But at this moment, she knew that he needed a reason to convince himself. This time, she raised her head. Her eyes were bright like a mirror that had been washed by water. They were clear, clean, and sincere. Xiao, I'm willing. These words were undoubtedly a heavy blow that blew away all the reason in his mind. Before he could make his next move, she had already leaned forward and kissed him on the lips. You. The young girl's fragrance lingered around the tip of his nose as they intimately stuck together. The coldness of her lips slightly relieved the heat in his body. But soon, the fire became stronger and stronger, making him want more. His lust made him lose his reason. He reached out and pulled her into his embrace. He deepened the kiss and his fingers began to wander around her body. It was like a person who had been walking in the desert for a long time, and finally found a clear spring. He only wanted to constantly drink it to satisfy himself. People who were deeply immersed in lust were terrifying. Pang Zhijing felt like she was being hugged by him, until she could not breathe. His movements were very fierce. Her lips were being rubbed by him, and her body was being touched by his hot hands. This was the first time she had tasted something like this. She was unfamiliar and afraid, but there was also a shyness that she did not realize. As they kissed, their clothes were messed up and their breaths were even more chaotic. His hand was on her belt. As long as he gently pulled, he would be able to see the scenery inside. However, he suddenly sobered up. He looked down at the person whose lips were red and swollen from his kiss, and whose clothes were messy. He was a bit annoyed. Even though the heat in his body had reached a peak, he tried to restrain himself. Have you really decided that you can let me bully you? Xiao, you're so long-winded. These kinds of words that were hard to say, don't make her say it a second time. He looked at her pair of moist and seductive eyes and lowered his voice. But who knows, this might be another trap set by Yu Qingxi. Perhaps the blood of a virgin is unable to detoxify the poison. Who knows, maybe the two of them will die together. Then I will accompany you in life and in death. After she finished speaking, she stared blankly and could not help but blush. In the past, when she heard other people say these kinds of words, she only felt that it was mushy. Now that she was in the same situation and in this kind of situation, she naturally said it without any hesitation. She did not feel embarrassed at all. She only felt a little embarrassed. But when she thought about how his body was suffering right now, that little bit of embarrassment immediately dissipated. Xiao was so shocked by her words that he couldn't say anything. Accompany you in life and in death. This was the first time he felt that this kind of oath was so pleasant to hear that it made his heart burst with desire. She had already expressed her stance to this extent. If he continued to hesitate, then he would really be a coward. Chapter 1290. It was unknown when, but outside, dark clouds had gathered. The entire world became hot and stuffy, and the air gradually became oppressive. In summer, the sky was clear and cloudless during the day, but at night, dark clouds gathered and it rained heavily. However, during the day, the sky returned to its original clear state. This was a common occurrence. At this moment, the entire night sky darkened. In the prince's mansion, except for those lit lanterns that were tossed around by strings in the storm, the rest of the mansion was plunged into darkness. The dark night was like a monster with its bloody mouth wide open, swallowing the entire world. And in the courtyard, the tightly shut windows isolated the raging wind and rain. Only the sound of the wind and rain could be heard. Compared to the absolute noise outside, the inside was as quiet as a pool of stagnant water. But not all of them. At least, the suppressed chest that was heaving up and down, the hot air that was spurting out, the slender fingers that were tightly gripping the brocade quilt, and the hand that was hesitating on the belt. Just now, she had already thrown caution to the wind and said something that even she herself found unbelievable. It was like a promise, but also like an oath. How could she let it go to her head? But why did she not feel regret? It was just that the silent appearance of the person in front of her made her feel uncertain. Was it really just her wishful thinking? Although her heart was very sad, but there was no other way. Even if he was not willing, she would still force herself on him. Even if he laughed at her afterwards, she would still save him. If it really could not be solved, then she would accompany him to die for love. He had done so many bad things, the heavens would definitely not accept him. Then she would accompany him to hell. She had sacrificed herself for him, so she must pester him and not let him abandon her. Just as she was alternating between melancholy and indignation, she suddenly heard, "Rip!" She lowered her head. Her belt was torn under his hand, and even her outer clothes were not spared. What the hell? Tearing her clothes at the slightest disagreement? Can't you be a bit gentler? If you don't make a sound, then do it so violently? Can you take care of her little heart? Before she could complain, her lips were sealed. Her hands were pinned above her head by one hand, and the other hand followed her exquisite curves down, taking off her clothes. Hey you! At least give her some mental preparation. Her innocent little face slowly turned crimson, as if the setting sun had spread over the surface of a river. Half of the river was red, and the other half was red. Xiao couldn't help but increase the force in his hand. He heard her moan involuntarily, but his eyes became even darker. The moment his hand touched her sensitive spot, she immediately bent over and giggled. It's so ticklish. Xiao, take your hand away. The wind was howling outside, but it was quiet inside. He could only hear his own violent heartbeat in his chest, as well as the movement of the hot and dry air. At this time, she was like a new moon, softly moaning and smiling in his arms. The air seemed to be soaked in the fragrance of wine, intoxicating him. His eyes sparkled and the color of his eyes changed in an instant. He sealed her lips and seized her breath. His movements became even more violent, as if he wanted to eat her up inch by inch. His sudden attack stunned her for a moment. She thought that he would try peaceful means before resorting to force. But who knew that he would be such a beast? So fickle. Just now he had mercilessly pushed her away, lied to her, bullied her, and chased her away. But now wasn't he pulling her over and doing this and that? This was simply too much. Who said that women didn't mean what they said? Weren't men the same? Their mouths said that they didn't want to, but their bodies were very honest. However, in the next moment, she exclaimed, "No mmm." However, the words were sucked into his mouth, and only the sound of mmm was left. He smiled, and his fingers moved slightly, like a half-open flower, sliding behind her ear and neck. Very quickly, it brought about waves of shivers on her skin. Wasn't he poisoned by something? Why was he still in the mood to tease her? The feeling of hanging her in the air and not being in a hurry to make a move really made her feel uncomfortable, but she couldn't pinpoint which part of it was uncomfortable. Actually, Xiao was having a hard time holding it in. However, when he thought about the situation and that it was both their first time, he was worried that his clumsiness would hurt her. He was also worried that the heat in his body would make him unable to control himself. So at this moment, when he still had a little bit of rationality left, he treated her as gently as possible. Originally, today was not their wedding night. To her, he already owed her, so it was even more impossible for him to let her suffer. This was the person he was going to cherish the most in his heart in the future. How could he hurt her at this time? Thus he was tormented internally, but on the surface he was gentle and considerate like the spring breeze, slowly controlling his strength. If Pang Zhijing knew what he was thinking, she would definitely shake her head and sigh. He was such a person. Even if the sky fell and the earth sank, he would still be able to maintain a calm and indifferent expression. It didn't matter if he was strong or evil, he was still the person she cared about. Feeling the tension under his skin, as well as the gentleness and care in his movements, she felt like she was being pitied, loved, and cared about. Perhaps it was because he owed her that he treated her this way. He didn't really care about her, but this moment was enough. Regardless of whether it was the painstaking care of him or the unconditional protection he had given her, she felt that she owed him the most. This time, if she could help him, even if she had to sacrifice herself, she wouldn't regret it. Just as she said, she was willing to do everything. Thus, She threw away all her reservations and opened her mouth to kiss him back. Feeling her jerky and clumsy response, the heat quickly flowed to his lower abdomen. He couldn't control himself anymore. His gaze became more and more heated as it locked onto her little face. Just now, the blood in their mouths had mixed in their mouths, so they couldn't tell whose it was anymore. However, this made their blood boil even more. A cluster of flames jumped in his eyes, and then it gradually started a prairie fire. His fingers moved and the two of them took off their clothes, exposing themselves to each other. Being so honest with each other made her a little flustered and helpless. Hot blood was clamoring in their bodies. But when she looked up and saw his eyes that were as wide and gentle as the ocean, all of her panic instantly receded like the tide. She couldn't help but softly call out his name. Xiao. At this moment he was holding her waist. His eyes moved, and he leaned over to kiss her forehead. He was sincere and emotional. You probably don't know how much I like you. I only found out just now. Chapter 1291. However, Pang Zhijing, who was submerged in the endless blue and white world of the sea and fireworks, could only see his lips moving, but couldn't hear what he was saying. You probably don't know how much I like you. I only found out just now. He thought that the most important person in his life, the one he loved the most, was only his mother. On that snowy night, when his mother wept and reluctantly watched him slowly close his eyes, he thought that half of his heart had been hollowed out, and there was no chance for it to be healed. However, it was only today that he discovered that at some unknown time, his broken heart had already been mended. There was even a little scoundrel living in it. If it was his past temperament, he would definitely chase her out. However, he didn't. He even allowed her to settle down in his heart. During this period of time, it wasn't that he didn't notice the traces, but he didn't know what it meant. At the beginning, Lin Jiangdong's ambiguous words pierced a small hole in his heart. He was angry and embarrassed and didn't want to investigate, so he threw this question to the back of his mind and ignored it. However, when Yu Qingxi directly questioned him, it was like a sharp arrow that shot towards his heart without holding back. The arrow's aura was like a rainbow that peeled off his disguise layer by layer, forcing him to face his heart directly. As it turned out, he had already slowly integrated this noisy, impatient, and bad-tempered little scoundrel into his life. If it wasn't for this, he wouldn't have forgiven her after she repeatedly stepped on his bottom line. He couldn't even get angry. Previously, all his indulgence towards her was because she was about to become his princess, so it was normal for him to tolerate her. However, in all fairness, if she didn't marry him, would he still spoil her? He would. Sometimes, you don't feel it at all and do as you wish, but you're already taking her into your wings and protecting her behind you. This was also why he detested Yu Qingxi for no reason or rhyme. It wasn't without reason, but it was because his heart ached for little scoundrel being blinded, and actually falling in love with trash like that. In his heart, he simply hated her for failing to live up to his expectations. Moreover, he felt rage towards Yu Qingxi for trampling on her sincerity, and he felt annoyed that he wasn't able to appear in her life earlier and isolate trash like that. However, love itself was like that. Two people went through hardships, wore the vicissitudes of life, crossed thousands of mountains and rivers, and then came in front of each other to treat each other's wounds. He was incomparably glad that after going around in circles, she would still appear in front of him. When he saw her return, he had an idea. Could it be that the heavens felt that his life was too bumpy and lonely, so they sent little rascal to his side? If it was, then he would gladly accept it. After he took his revenge, he would spend the rest of his time with her. No matter where he went, imperial power and wealth, if she didn't want it, he wouldn't take it. It was fine as long as she was happy. Actually, to him, those things weren't important. It was just that he had been alone for a long time and didn't have anything he cared about. Therefore, he wanted to take away the things that those people valued the most, and snatch away the love of their hearts. That was the best revenge. The poison in his body had already slowly subsided following the two's union. That oppressive feeling of suffocation was swept away. However, when he lowered his head to look at the person lying on the bed, her face was like peach blossoms, dripping with fragrant sweat, and her charming eyes were like silk, but she couldn't help but pant lightly. A flame reignited in his eyes again, and it slowly flourished. As for the rest, it was completely instinctive. Once a person was infected with the taste of ecstasy, they would never be willing to let go again. Your poison has been cured? When the two separated again while panting heavily, Pang Zhijing, who was thinking about his body, worriedly asked. From this angle, what entered her eyes was his lean chest, wide shoulders and narrow buttocks. It was simply the golden ratio, and that faintly discernible Apollo's belt was simply the rhythm of nosebleeds. She immediately looked away with a red face. He raised his head, his eyes bright, but in an instant, it turned into pain and he cried out in pain. When she saw that he was in pain, her heart suddenly softened. She hugged him with heartache. It's okay, it's okay. It will definitely get better. He nodded dejectedly, and then when she was feeling heartache for him, he directly blocked her lips. He felt that she was very cooperative and obedient. A smile flashed across his eyes, and then he wholeheartedly immersed himself in, not giving her a chance to regret. It was as if she was floating on the sea again, and he was the only driftwood that saved her life. She could only tightly hug him and sink with him. However, as time went on, she became weaker and weaker, and he became more and more clingy. She slowly came to her senses. She weakly reached out to grab his hands that were constantly messing around. She wanted to question him seriously, but the words that came out of her mouth were no different from acting coquettishly. Your poison, is it cured or not? She was discovered by little rascal. Xiao licked his lips. It was extremely charming, but the words that came out of his mouth made her want to stomp her feet. Although Yu Qingxi isn't a good person, this method of curing the poison didn't lie. Then what are you doing now? Her bright red lips couldn't help but tremble in embarrassment. What should I do? I can't stop anymore. His tone seemed to be innocent and troubled, which made her clench her teeth even more. Be good, don't bite yourself. My heart will ache. As he said that, he lowered his head and covered her lips. He used the nimble tip of his tongue to pry open her teeth that were biting on her lips, and then invaded without hesitation. How can you bully people like this? When the two of them separated again, she then had the chance to accuse him. However, her eyes were like spring in water, so moist that it made one want to get close to her. Her entire body seemed to be covered in a layer of powder, so pink and tender that it made one want to touch her. Her charm was overflowing and captivated one's soul. She was like the best in the world, making one unable to stop. He pressed against her, and the moment he entered, he laughed softly in her ear and said, You can bully me back. Woo. She couldn't help but moan. It was too much, too hateful, and also too embarrassing. But she couldn't push him away no matter what. She could only follow him and leap into the clouds amidst this colorful brilliance. Shallow wine in front of people, hugging by the soft jade lamp. Looking back into the embrace, it was always appropriate. Pain, 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 she gently pushed her husband away. Gradually, she heard the sound of trembling, slightly startled and flushed. They tried and tried more, but there were no gaps at all. This time, the flavor became crazy. They moved, their arms wrapped around each other, their lips close, and their tongues tangled. Deep, shallow, intoxicated and flying. He looked at her domineeringly and dotingly, blooming under his body. Outside, the rain was heavy and the wind was strong. In the room, it was raining heavily. The sound of the wind and rain covered the soft moans and gasps inside, making people even more indulgent. There are still many things I want. This night is so long, I'll share it with you. Chapter 1292. For the entire night, the wind and rain continued to pound on the earth. In this kind of environment, all living things shrunk their heads, quietly waiting for the storm to end. Slowly, as dawn approached, the rain slowly stopped. The sultry summer heat was swept away, and the entire world was filled with a moist mist. Perhaps it was because it was especially dark before dawn, but no one noticed the mischievous person in the air. In the quiet courtyard in the restless room, calmness slowly returned. His lust had gradually subsided with the intimate union of the two. She had been tormented by him for the entire night, so she should be tired. Little rascal leaned against his chest, breathing shallowly as she fell asleep. Her innocent and harmless appearance was like a flower in early spring, fragile and petite, as if she would break if he touched her lightly. The flame in his eyes had already disappeared, and his complexion had returned to normal, except that he was still a little pale because he had vomited too much blood. He could clearly feel that the poison in his body had disappeared. He lowered his head to look at little rascal nestled beside him, and softly said, "Beautifully done." He pulled her into his arms, and then hugged her as he gradually fell asleep. Peng Zhijing moved her body, and then smelled a familiar scent. She was relieved to find a place in his arms, and comfortably fell into a deep sleep. The first rays of the morning sun in the summer, once it jumped out of the horizon, it would be the time for the world to brighten. 2 hours later, Xiao slowly woke up, and for a moment, he was still a little stunned, as if in all these years, he had never slept so deeply. He slept until dawn, and when he moved his hand, he felt the person in his arms hugging him even tighter. Memories of last night came flooding in, and his gaze slowly became gentle and tender. He raised his hand to pull her in front of his eyes, and seriously looked at her confused sleeping face, and he couldn't help but smile. When a person who was abstinent suddenly became enlightened, it was as if he had changed his nature, and his attitude towards his sweetheart would not be the same as before. His gaze fell on her dark red lips, and his eyes moved slightly, and then he lowered his head, rubbing against her lips. She was blocked by him to the point that she couldn't breathe properly. She moaned, and just happened to slightly open her lips, allowing him to take advantage of the opportunity to enter, and then sweep away all of her. Last night, she was so exhausted that she couldn't sleep at all. Right now, she was completely following her body's primitive reaction, unconsciously following his movements, and then, her obedient obedience and unconscious closeness to him, as well as the crisp jingle of the bell on her ankle, gave him the same feeling as last night, adding to the fun. It made Xiao's eyes darken, and he could not help but pull her into his embrace and fiercely ravage her. However, considering that it was her first time last night, because he did not control himself, she had already suffered too much. So for the sake of her health, he could not indulge himself anymore. So after he planted a heavy kiss on her lips, he forced himself to get up. Otherwise, he might leave her here today. He got up, changed his clothes, and stood in front of the bed, feeling refreshed. He hadn't forgotten his plan for today. Seeing that it was still early, he sat in front of the bed and stared at her. After understanding his feelings, he no longer hid his feelings. He reached out and placed her exposed arm under the blanket. When he touched her snow-white skin, his fingertips trembled slightly, but quickly returned to normal. The person who was usually noisy, when asleep, actually had such a gentle and quiet side. He couldn't help but feel that she was a woman who could bring surprises everywhere. Thinking of how she did not hesitate last night, even if it meant risking her life to save him, his heart skipped a beat. That kind of throbbing, once again swept over him. This was the first time that someone didn't ask for anything in return, didn't trade for benefits, held a pure heart, and was willing to give up everything for him. This made him feel a bit flattered, but more than that, he was moved. She really was a woman who made people's hearts warm. But what he didn't know was that after the first time, there would be a second time. He suddenly stood up and walked over to a cabinet. From inside, he took out a purple gold wooden box. Looking at the material, it was quite old. At this time, he opened it, revealing a jade bracelet that glowed with a faint green light. He held it in his hand, and a warm and cold feeling wrapped around his fingertips. This was a bracelet made from a piece of ancient jade. It had the effect of expelling evil and avoiding disasters. If a woman wore it, it would be warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Not only could it regulate the body, it could also absorb some of the poison in the body. This was the so-called expelling evil and avoiding disasters. As time passed, the jade bracelet would become brighter. It could be said that people raised the jade, and the jade raised the person. He returned to his seat, then pulled up her naughty hand that was outside the blanket, and put the jade bracelet on her wrist. Her frame was very slender. Although the jade bracelet was small, it was just right to wear. Moreover, it looked like it was tailor-made for her. It was very suitable. The jade shined because of the person, and the person became more gentle and beautiful because of the jade. He said softly, "This was left behind by mother." It's a family heirloom from my daughter-in-law. I originally wanted to put it on you on the day of your wedding, but it's about time now. However, you have to take good care of this jade bracelet. In the future, when you meet a woman you like, give it to her. It will be passed down from generation to generation. Our Luo family's bloodline cannot be broken. Mother, I'm afraid that I won't be able to meet someone I like in this lifetime. You're thinking too much. You will. You're still young. Mother believes that you'll meet someone sooner or later. His mother's smiling voice sounded in his ears. His eyes became slightly hot, and he looked at the person on the bed again. Mother, were you afraid that your son would be too lonely, so you sent her to me? He held her hand, then touched it to his lips. He said in a low and serious voice, "You can't be careless anymore. You have to take good care of our family heirloom." At this time, there was a light knock on the door. The gentleness in his eyes faded. He lowered his eyebrows and calculated the time. It was about time to set off. His gaze turned slightly and landed on the person on the bed. He slowly said, "When I return this time, I'll have more or less taken my revenge. When the time comes, I'll take you wherever you want to go." When he finished speaking, he bent down and kissed the corner of her eye. Then, without lingering any longer, he got up and left. Because he knew that she was naked under the blankets, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself after tasting her for the first time, and wanted her again. Thus, he didn't give himself a chance to turn back. Now was the time to get down to business. He couldn't indulge in love. When Xiao walked out of the room, Lin Jiangdong turned and saw him. His gaze fell on the slowly closing door, and his expression was a little strange. Last night, the princess stayed in the prince's estate? Seeing the joy hidden in his master's calm expression, he didn't need to guess to know what had happened. But now wasn't the time to be concerned about this. He reported, "Lord, everything is ready." "Good, let's go." Chapter 1293. However, just as Xiao got into the car, a gust of wind blew fiercely, and the clear sky suddenly turned dark. Lin Jiangdong frowned. "This rain only stopped in the morning, is it going to start again?" With that, he turned his head and asked, "Lord, looking at the weather, should we continue?" Xiao sat in the car, his voice was a little faint. "No matter how bad the weather is today, this plan must be carried out." Lin Jiangdong knew that Lord had been waiting for this opportunity for too long, and was unwilling to give it up. Thus, after agreeing, he ordered the guards to move forward immediately. Looking at the strong wind outside the window, Xiao's face darkened slightly. He had been waiting for an opportunity to completely overthrow Xiao Su and the Liang clan. And now, the opportunity had finally arrived. With this opportunity, he had already set up a chain of plans, and as long as he played the first part well, then Xiao Su and those people would not be able to escape. For more than 10 years, he had spent all his energy to sharpen his spear, and now he had to use it on the blade. Thinking of this, his chest suddenly hurt, and a fishy sweetness surged up and overflowed from the corner of his mouth. He frowned slightly, thinking that the remaining poison was not completely removed, but when he checked his pulse, he found out that the poison from yesterday had invaded his internal organs for too long, and it would take some time to clean them up. Today, it only affected his internal energy, but it did not matter. He did not need to do anything today, and only needed to play the role of a weakling. Thinking of this, he did not take this injury to heart, and wholeheartedly focused on the next plan. An hour after he left, Pang Zhijing also showed signs of waking up. In a daze, she felt as if her whole body had been run over by a car, and then had the illusion of rolling through a pile of rocks. She was sore and unbearable, and did not even have the strength to move her arms. After a while, she slowly opened her eyes, and after adapting to the light, she found that at first glance it looked familiar, but it was not her room. She raised her arm to support her aching forehead, but was shocked by the dense and ambiguous marks on her arm, and immediately woke up. She sat up, and found that not only her arms, shoulders, chest, and lower abdomen were all red marks. Wait a minute. She was not wearing anything, and immediately pulled up the blanket to wrap herself up tightly. It was only after this shock that her memories were reopened. Last night's scene appeared in her mind like a movie, She widened her eyes, shocked and ashamed. Last night, she did not know where her courage came from, to suppress him. If it was a normal time, she would not even dare to think of it. But in the end he kept pestering her and refused to let go. No matter how she begged for mercy, he kept pressuring her, and she could only let him bully her. She said she could bully him back, but in the end, didn't she let him off easy? This was too much. However, the soreness all over her body and the ambiguous marks on her skin reminded her of how intense the two of them had been last night. So last night she and he really. She did not dare to think further. That's right, poison. She looked around, but could not find him. From the looks of it, he had already detoxified the poison, and then walked away alive? Hateful. She punched the brocade blanket. After eating, he just left her here. This was too much. Then when she struck out with her weak hand, she felt even more dizzy. Following that, she felt a cold touch on her wrist, and she couldn't help but stretch her hand out from the blanket. On her wrist, there was an extra bracelet. Although she did not know how to differentiate the variety, but this bracelet looked very comfortable, and looked very nice. Most importantly, it was very comfortable to wear. Who helped her put it on? Xiao. At least he still had a bit of conscience. She would treat this as a farewell gift. She took a deep breath and prepared to get down from the couch. But then she saw the floor full of rags. That's right, rags. Yesterday, she was still wearing a dress made of expensive fabric. Now it had become a rag that could be used to wipe the floor. What a waste. Thinking of how impatient he was last night, her face turned red, and she quickly wrapped herself in the blanket and walked towards the wardrobe. She knew that his clothes were all placed here. So today she would just wear his clothes and wait till she went back to change. She couldn't just walk around with a few rags wrapped around her. She couldn't afford to lose this face. However, when she opened Xiao's wardrobe, she found that it was actually neatly stacked with women's clothes, and there were several wardrobes full of them. She remembered that the last few times she came, she had seen him holding a cloak, but there weren't these clothes inside. Could it be that these were prepared for her? She suddenly felt a little guilty, so she casually took out a set and immediately closed the wardrobe. She was afraid that if she continued to look at it, her heart would feel uncomfortable. After quickly changing into the clothes, she found that it was very fitting. Pang Zhijing sighed in her heart. It was indeed prepared for her. But she didn't think too deeply about it. No matter what he did, she would not put it in her heart, otherwise she wouldn't be able to leave even if she wanted to. In the restaurant, Yu Qingxi looked at the dead women on the ground with a gloomy face, then turned around and scolded several subordinates who were in charge of watching. What are you doing? He slipped away right under your nose, and you only found out now? A bunch of good-for-nothings. We also didn't expect that Prince Yi would escape through the window. He is a sickly lord, and no one knew that he could resist the poison. It's our negligence. A bunch of good-for-nothings spoiled my good plan. Yu Qingxi slapped the table with a furious face. It seems that Xiao can't be left alive. Send someone to track him down. It's best if he's poisoned, but if he's lucky, get rid of him no matter what, but don't leave any traces. Yes. At this time, one of Yu Qingxi's trusted subordinates came forward and said, My lord, I heard from the courier station that the princess didn't go back last night. Do you think that Prince Yi? Everyone knew what he didn't finish his sentence. Yu Qingxi's face instantly darkened. If Pang Zhijing used him to detoxify him, anger surged in his chest. Go and investigate the princess's whereabouts for me. If she really slept with Prince Yi, don't worry about Prince Yi. He's just a good-for-nothing lord, and he can't do anything. Just keep an eye on him, and get rid of the princess secretly for me. Such a fickle woman doesn't deserve to live in this world with the title of Princess Nansong. The subordinates present couldn't understand their lord's logic at all. Why did he want to kill the princess? In the end they found a reason. Perhaps his lord wanted to avenge Miss Ro. However, only Yu Qingxi knew that if he didn't want something, he wouldn't let others have it. If she was already with Xiao, then he would send her to hell. He would let her know that he, Yu Qingxi, wasn't someone she could like or discard as she pleased. Chapter 1294. In the King of England's residence. Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su were playing chess in the courtyard. Chu Qingyan was still the one who repented after suffering a crushing defeat. She shamelessly put away the chess piece she had just played, and then righteously said, "I didn't think it through just now, so I took it back first. I'll play again after I've thought it through. It's great that you can correct your mistakes. You have to give me a chance to correct myself, right?" Xining couldn't help but cover her eyes. Oh my God, such a shameless person must not be her master. She inexplicably felt that her master was always far from her usual dignified and gentle appearance in front of His Highness. From the morning until now, she didn't know how many times her master had acted shamelessly, but His Highness didn't seem to even frown. She covered her eyes again. His Highness doted on her master too much. One was willing to hit while the other was willing to be hit. What else could she say? During this period of time, she witnessed the interaction between her master and His Highness, the sweetness between Yan Luo and Ethereal, and the public display of affection between Lin Chujiu and Lin Chujiu. Xining felt that she was spreading PDA everywhere. She held her heart and felt very sad. For Chu Qingyan, playing chess with the big ice cube could satisfy her desire to be infinitely tolerated and indulged. Moreover, she could endlessly act shamelessly without being thrown out by the big ice cube. Her usual little dark thoughts could be vividly displayed. She just liked to see him helpless but willing to give in to her. In the past, his world was only black and white. He was schemed against and went to the battlefield. He didn't have any interests or hobbies in life, as if he was born to work for the country. She didn't want his world to be so pale and monotonous, so she often pulled him to do things that he hadn't done before. Playing chess shamelessly was just to make him happy and add a little spice to his ordinary life. For Xiao Su, if she used all her usual effort to play chess with the little fellow, she wouldn't have lost so miserably and wouldn't have to regret her moves. However, he just liked to see her following her heart. In front of him, she was as transparent as a stream. She didn't have any calculations, but only placed the chess pieces based on her feelings and mood. She was born from the heart and moved by the reason, which meant that in front of him, she wasn't even willing to play chess with him. He couldn't bear to part with her like this, because very few people could be as clean and transparent as water in front of another person. Even if it was in front of the person they loved, there was basically no one who would entrust themselves wholeheartedly to another person. And even more so, there was no one who could unreservedly lay themselves out for others to see. But the little fellow did it in front of him. Therefore, he was willing to watch her find excuses to act shamelessly. He was willing to let her act shamelessly for the rest of her life. Thus, the elegant pastime of others became the daily flirting of this young couple. Just when the servants around them couldn't bear to watch this scene, Turin and Hualing walked over. Of course, they really didn't want to disturb their two masters' fun, but they really had urgent matters to deal with. "Little Princess Consort, our people are ready. When can we go pick up the princess?" Hualing stood in front of the stone table and asked respectfully. Chu Qingyan was just thinking about her next move when she heard this question. She couldn't help but look up at the changing weather above her head, and said with a slight frown, "If you're ready, then the sooner the better. Looking at the sky, there will probably be a rainstorm later. It won't be convenient for you to replace the flowers with the trees, but it will be very convenient for you to send the people away. Once the rain comes, the traces will be quickly erased. It will be a good opportunity." Hualing immediately nodded and said, "Okay, Water Spirit is already waiting there with a substitute. This subordinate will take care of the matter as soon as possible." After saying this, after receiving Chu Qingyan's signal, Hualing immediately left the courtyard. After Hualing left, Turin stepped forward and reported, "Master, General Li's men have already arrived outside the city. It is estimated that they will enter the city in the afternoon." Xiao Su's hand that was holding the chess piece paused and the corner of his lips hooked up. "Very good. Continue to pay close attention to his movements. When he enters the city, then report back." "Yes." Turin followed. At this time, Chu Qingyan threw away the white chess piece in her hand and supported her face on the stone table with both hands. Her eyes were filled with joy. "Once General Li arrives, you can hand over?" Seeing that her mind was no longer on the chess game, Xiao Su also put down the chess piece and said non-committally, Imperial Father's meaning is that as long as General Li returns to the capital, we can hand over. Hearing this, she immediately jumped up, her face full of joy. Good, good, good. I'm very much looking forward to your handover. Xiao Su reached out to pinch her delicate nose and said with a smile, I'm about to lose my job, but you're so happy. She quickly moved to his side and hugged his arm, fawningly saying, If you lose your job, you can start a business. Our fief is so big. It's a bit barren, but we can rely on our own hands to get rich, right? Moreover, we have so many people. When the time comes, we can all go out one by one. We won't have to worry about food and drink, and we can even lead the people to a well-off life. Standing at the side, a scene appeared in Xining's mind. Turin and the other fire spirits didn't have swords on their waists, but sickles. What they carried on their shoulders wasn't a weapon, but a shoulder pole. That scene was too beautiful. She didn't dare to look. Jasper at the side stroked her chin and nodded. In this case, this subordinate can raise a pond of fish. When the time comes, this subordinate can make braised fish, sweet and sour fish, boiled fish. Xining's heart twitched. That was too scary. However, she also wanted to raise silkworms and plant mulberry leaves. When the time comes, she could weave clothes for her master. Indeed, people who didn't belong to the same family would not enter the same house. Hearing the little fellow's words, it seemed that she had already planned all the plans for the future. His mouth couldn't help but curve into a gentle smile. Looking at the person squatting in front of him, he reached out and stroked her head, saying in a low voice, Okay, we'll be self-reliant and self-sufficient. We don't need to look at other people's faces anymore. She nodded heavily. Xiao Su chuckled, then said, There's a matter regarding Jean Xian. What is it? She tilted her head and asked. He came to find me yesterday. He wants to resign to the imperial court 1 month after we leave. Xiao Su said slowly. You agreed to it? She asked in surprise. No, I asked him to consider it carefully. At this time, her head was filled with questions. Why would he resign for no reason? I heard that he did very well in that position. If it wasn't for the fact that he's too young and is afraid that people will look down on him, I'm afraid that he could have jumped 3 ranks. Hearing this, Xiao Su looked at her deeply. Back then, Jean Xian entered the imperial court to become an official because of you. Now that we're leaving here, he naturally doesn't want to stay here any longer. These words were like a stone falling into a calm lake, stirring up layers of waves. Chu Qingyan looked at him in disbelief. He's not a person who values power, so you should be able to guess. She suddenly recalled the words he said when he was preparing to enter the imperial court as an official, and a warm current couldn't help but surge in her heart. At this time, Xiao Su stroked her long hair, saying in a gratified tone, Ian, the people who stay by your side are all very attentive and loyal to you. You're already a successful leader. She nodded. How fortunate was she to be able to have such sincere followers. Chapter 1295. After Pang Zhijing left Xiaoho's courtyard, she saw Lu standing outside with a conflicted expression on her face. Pang Zhijing didn't know what she was thinking, but she seemed to have made a decision. She lowered her head and was about to rush into the courtyard, not even noticing Pang Zhijing's appearance. Just as Lu was about to barge in, Pang Zhijing laughed and said, What are you doing? The sudden voice brought Lu back to her senses. When she saw the person standing by the door, she immediately exclaimed, Princess Ui. Seeing Lu's incoherent manner, Pang Zhijing was puzzled. What's wrong with you? Princess, are you all right? I waited for you the whole night last night. The butler said that there was no need to worry with Lord around, so he sent me away. But she only needed to worry if Lord was around. Lu was looking at her anxiously and couldn't help but size her up nervously. She looked as if her princess had been taken advantage of. Pang Zhijing met Lu's undisguised gaze and thought of something. She suddenly felt her body heat up and her face flushed red. She wasn't just taken advantage of last night. She was bullied over and over again the whole night, okay? But how could she say something like that? Luckily, the clothes that Xiaoho had prepared for her were quite tight. Her skin was covered from head to toe except for her face. Otherwise, if the marks on her body were seen, she wouldn't be able to wash them off even if she jumped into the yellow river. She coughed softly and met Lu Er's suspicious gaze. She pretended to be calm and said, "What could have happened to me? I just played chess with Xiao the whole night. His chess skills are terrible. I won against him effortlessly. Also, this person is a sore loser. He kept dragging me down and I couldn't sleep well the whole night." Lu Er was puzzled. She heard that Lord's chess skills were excellent. Why did it sound different when it came to her master? If she continued, she would be exposed. Peng Zhijing immediately walked past her and urged, "Don't just stand there. We should go back." Lu Er didn't dare to delay any longer. She immediately followed, forgetting all her questions. After getting into the carriage, Peng Zhijing let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Lu Er didn't ask any more questions. Otherwise, she wouldn't know how to continue lying. However, she suddenly thought of something, and it was a very important thing. She and Xiao were so intense last night. Could it be? There was no such thing as a contraceptive pill in ancient times. If he wanted to go to the pharmacy to get a contraceptive soup, he was afraid that it would be too late. However, she comforted herself that she shouldn't be so unlucky as to be hit in one hit. Thinking of this, she comforted herself and relaxed. Then she threw this matter to the back of her mind. However, she had forgotten that her fight with Xiao last night was not as simple as just a single blow. At this moment, a thunderbolt exploded in the sky. Peng Zhijing couldn't help but open the curtains. She found that the distant sky had been covered by dark clouds. At this moment, the world was dark and a rainstorm was about to come. Thinking of this, a few bean-sized raindrops suddenly fell from the sky and quickly wet the ground. Then, there were passers-by running wildly in the rain. In the blink of an eye, the rain became heavier. The sound of rain came from the roof of the carriage, covering the movements on both sides. "Princess, the rain is so heavy. It just rained last night, and now it's raining again. It's really worrying me to death." Lu Er was thinking about drying the silks and satins in the princess's dowry. However, it seemed that it would be delayed for another 2 days. Peng Zhijing was thinking about the person who went to Hugua Temple today. She didn't know if the road was easy to walk in such heavy rain. She heard that it was all mountain roads. As soon as this thought surfaced, she suppressed it. There were so many people around him. How could anything happen to him? Moreover, he hid his identity so well. Unless there was something wrong with his head, he wouldn't go against the sickly lord. Thinking of this, she subconsciously touched the jade bracelet on her wrist. If nothing unexpected happened, she would leave this place when she returned to the relay station. She racked her brains to get rid of this identity and this situation. However, when the day really came, she suddenly felt a sense of loss in her heart. It was as if the belief that supported her had disappeared. However, she clearly knew one thing. That was, compared to before, she was even more reluctant to part with him. However, since she had already decided to leave, there was no turning back. "Princess, we've arrived at the relay station." She took a deep breath and walked down the carriage. However, because the weather change was too unexpected, there was no rain gear in the carriage. Moreover, most of the people in the relay station were guards, and there weren't many maids to serve them. Therefore, the two of them walked through the long corridor to a place where they could shelter from the rain. Lu Er volunteered to get an umbrella, and left her under the eaves to shelter herself from the rain. She leaned against the wall in boredom, and counted the water circles on the ground. As she counted, she became tired. Last night was really torturous. She wanted to sleep no matter where she went. Just as she was cursing Xiao in her heart, a rough voice sounded from the other side of the wall. "Sir, the dozens of masters we brought this time are all here." "Very good. The Crown Prince asked us to disguise ourselves as Xiao Lai and ride to Hugua Temple to assassinate Prince Yi. Now that our men are all ready, we can take action now." After these words, chaotic footsteps could be heard leaving. She could imagine how many people were on the other side of the wall. Peng Huang asked people to assassinate Xiao. Weren't they even allies? Did they turn against each other and become enemies? This wasn't impossible. Two people who were working together could draw their swords to each other if they didn't agree. Would he be in trouble? No, he had so many masters around him. No matter how many men Pang Huang had, they were no match for him. Moreover, she had seen his martial arts. Although it was rare, it was definitely not a problem for him to protect himself. She kept telling herself in her mind to be at ease. At this moment, Lu Er came over with an umbrella. "Princess, I'm back. The rain is too heavy." The umbrella was almost blown away. Lu Er's grumbling laughter sounded in her ears, but she didn't hear a word. She followed Lu Er mechanically to her courtyard. After talking for a long time, she realized that the princess wasn't listening at all. Instead, she was in a daze. After leaving Prince Yi's estate, the princess became a little strange. Although she thought so, she didn't dare to say much. When the two returned to the courtyard, Pang Zhijing stepped into the room and saw Huling, who had been waiting for a long time. She thought of something and immediately said to Lu Er, who was about to enter the room, "Go to the kitchen and boil a pot of water. I'm thirsty." Lu Er, who didn't know the truth, was sent away. "Princess, my young princess consort ordered me to come and pick you up. Are you ready?" Huling went forward and asked with a slight bow. Xiao Liqi only obeyed his two masters. He was always courteous to others, even to the Sichuan emperor. You wouldn't be respectful because of your high status. Pang Zhijing didn't care that much, but her mind had flown to Xiao Ho at this time. Chapter 1296. Princess, Princess. Huling saw that she did not respond and immediately called out a few times. Pang Zhijing immediately came back to her senses. She waved her hand and said, "It's nothing, I'm thinking about some things. All right, we can go now." Huling looked at her with a confused gaze, but he could not tell what was wrong. He nodded and walked out. When the two of them came out, Lu Er happened to walk over. She saw a stranger wearing a bamboo hat beside her princess, and couldn't help looking at him with vigilance. She asked her princess, "Princess, where are you going?" Huling looked at Pang Zhijing before pulling on his bamboo hat to wait at the entrance. Pang Zhijing turned around and looked deeply at Lu Er. "I'm going out for a bit. You properly stay in the relay station and wait. Wait for me to come back." Didn't she just come back? Why was the princess going out? But as a servant, she did not have the right to ask this. At this time, she saw the princess walk towards her and then suddenly reach out to hug her. While she was stunned, she heard the princess speak in a low and hoarse voice. "Obediently stay in the relay station. If you miss me, someone will take you away." Princess. What did that mean? After saying this, Pang Zhijing put away the deep reluctance in her eyes. When she took her hands back, she had already recovered her usual mischievous smile. "I'm just teasing you. I'm leaving." She waved her hand and quickly walked towards Huling before the two of them left together. Lu Er watched her princess leave and her heart inexplicably hurt. She suddenly wanted to leave with the princess. There is actually no one guarding the relay station today. It seems like it will be very easy for us to leave. At least they won't find out that the princess is missing so quickly. When they find us, everything will have been arranged. Huling's hands were on the back of his head, looking very relaxed. It seemed like he was casually talking to this absent-minded princess, but he was actually helping her relax. However, no one could see that he was in a defensive state. As long as something happened, he would be the fastest to react. She didn't know if it was because all the experts in the relay station were out, but the entire relay station was very quiet, like it was an empty courtyard. Pang Zhijing's heart trembled. Her entire body was like a stone as she numbly walked. "Princess, there is a market today. Our carriage is stuck on the road, but we'll be there soon. There are many citizens inside and outside the city, so it will be good for us to leave the city." Huling continued. It had to be said, today was a good chance to steal the dragon and phoenix. However, the absent-minded princess's eyes suddenly turned cold as she turned her head and said to him, "Huling, can you wait for me for a while? I have something urgent to do." Huling was interrupted halfway, and he looked at Pang Zhijing with some confusion. "Princess, what is so urgent? You can tell me and I'll send someone to do it for you." Pang Zhijing's eyes lit up. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly remembered that Xiao Ho and them were sworn enemies. If they knew that Xiao Ho was in danger, They would definitely not help her inform Xiao Ho. Therefore, not only could she not tell them, but she also had to keep this news to herself. She immediately shook her head. Only I can do this. Wait for me outside the city. I'll be back soon. Seeing that Pang Zhijing was deliberately hiding it, Hualing did not ask anymore. However, he stopped Pang Zhijing, who was preparing to leave. Princess, wait. After Hualing finished speaking, he put his thumb and index finger to his lips and whistled. Following this, a black horse quickly rushed over from the side of the street. Hualing stroked the horse that ran to his side, and then gave the reins to her. Princess, it'll be faster if you ride a horse. Pang Zhijing gratefully looked at him. Thank you. This is what we should do. Pang Zhijing nodded and took the reins. Then she jumped onto the horse and whipped it out of the city. The original Pang Zhijing grew up in the grasslands, so her horsemanship was not bad. Therefore, when Pang Zhijing sat on the back of the horse, her hidden skills were awakened. She breathed a sigh of relief, and then rushed towards Fengtai Mountain. That was the only way to Hugua Temple. A bit faster. She had to tell him this news before those people arrived. Raindrops suddenly began to fall from the sky. Drop by drop, they quickly gathered together. Hualing watched Pang Zhijing's back gradually disappear into the rain, and slightly knit his brows. This rain, it came at the wrong time. At this time in the moving palace. Sir, our people saw the princess ride a horse out of the city. The person playing with the fan heard this and immediately closed his fan. His eyes lit up. Then what are we waiting for? There is such a great opportunity in front of us. Yes, this subordinate will send people out now. When there was only Yu Qingxi left in the room, he shook his head with a look of regret. Princess, oh princess, the roads are slippery in the rain. Why are you going out in this kind of weather? If you're not careful and fall, what will we do if you die? After the regret, his voice was filled with a trace of poison. Relax, this young master is very easy to talk to and will not hold a grudge. Every year, I will go to your grave to burn some incense for you. The carriage heading towards Fengtai Mountain was currently slowly moving. Although it was raining heavily outside, the carriage was as still as a mountain. White smoke rose from the incense burner, dispersing the smell of grass and earth. It lingered in the carriage, refreshing the mind and calming the mind. Xiao Ho leisurely leaned back on the couch, holding a book in his hand. His gaze fell on the pages of the book, but his thoughts drifted elsewhere. Although he had lost his mind because of the poison in the beginning, everything that happened last night was still vivid in his mind. Her delicate and smooth skin under his fingertips, her entire body turning pink under his teasing, as well as the scene of her subconsciously hugging him at the end of each time. He discovered that his heart, which had always been as calm as still water, was suddenly rippling. He closed his eyes, suppressing the heat in his lower abdomen. He couldn't help but rub his forehead. Just thinking about it made him feel a little stunned and a little unfamiliar. However, he was even more impatient to see that little rascal in his arms who was like a blooming flower. At this time, a subordinate's voice sounded from outside. Lord, Crown Prince Pang's people are lying in ambush on Fengtai Mountain. When our people and General Li's people arrive, they will immediately take action. Good, inform Crown Prince Pang's people to wait patiently. It would be best if General Li's people coincidentally saw the assassination attempt on this prince. The play must be complete. His smile was cold. This play originally didn't have General Li's people, but a few days ago, he discovered that their return to the capital coincided with their plan. Since that was the case, it would be a waste not to use it. What was more convincing than having Imperial Father's people see it? At that time, he wouldn't need to make Xiao Su the scapegoat. General Li's people were very familiar with Xiao Lai cavalry. When Pang Huang's people played the role of Xiao Lai cavalry, they were 70 to 80% similar. When today was over, he could sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. When both sides were injured, he would reap the benefits. At that time, he could give that little rascal the life she wanted. Chapter 1297. It was stormy in the city. It was dark and gloomy. Sichuan Emperor stood at the highest point of the palace and looked at the vast darkness in the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. Just as eunuch Qiao was about to fall asleep, Sichuan Emperor suddenly asked. Xiao Ji, will General Li arrive in the capital today? Your Majesty, General Li sent a pigeon last night, and said that he will be able to enter the city by this evening at the latest. Eunuch Xiao immediately replied. Very good. The time I gave Su is almost up. Eunuch Xiao was a little puzzled. He could understand the first part, but he was confused about the last part. Although General Li came back to take over His Royal Highness's military power, His Majesty's words were too strange. However, based on his many years of experience by His Majesty's side, he seemed to smell something unusual. He could not help but worry about the King of England. Just as he was feeling uneasy, Sichuan Emperor spoke again. This time, his voice was mixed with the wind and rain. It was somewhat cold and frightening. Summon the King of England to the palace for an audience. Eunuch Xiao was stunned. He raised his eyes to look at the figure whose dragon robes were fluttering wildly in the wind. That figure was so lofty and so decisive that his heart trembled. He didn't dare to look directly at him, and immediately lowered his head. Yes. At this time he heard Sichuan Emperor say slowly, do not alarm anyone. This old servant understands. Eunuch Xiao retreated with fear. When he reached the corner of the jade steps, he looked up at the changing sky and felt a chill in his heart. Was the weather going to change? An hour later, Eunuch Xiao appeared at the gate of the King of England's residence. Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan were still playing chess. However, they had moved from the courtyard to the attic of the main courtyard. This place was not only ventilated, but also had a view of the surroundings of the prince's residence. Big Ice Cube, you can't leave like this. You'll be eaten by me. Come, you have to leave it here. Xiao Su supported his cheek with one hand and looked at her with amusement as she changed the steps of his chess pieces. Only she could casually move other people's chess pieces like this. But it didn't matter, he spoiled her. He casually glanced outside and suddenly stopped when he saw something. After placing down the chess pieces, Chu Qingyan's face was filled with pride as she was about to receive Big Ice Cube's praise. However, when she looked up, she saw that he was staring at something. She could not help but follow his gaze. What are you looking at? Someone from the palace is here. As Xiao Su spoke, Chu Qingyan also saw Qiao Ji, who was preparing to get off the carriage. She could not help but squint her eyes. Isn't Eunuch Xiao His Majesty's trusted aide? Why did he come to the prince's mansion in the heavy rain? And what was the matter that required him to leave the palace in such bad weather? Chu Qingyan's heart was full of doubts. At this time, Turin appeared in the attic. Master, Eunuch Xiao is here. He wants to see you. Bring him up. Xiao Su said lightly, glancing at the chess game. It was messed up by the little fellow again, but it could still be played. Her mind was still on Eunuch Xiao's arrival, and she couldn't help but ask curiously, Big Ice Cube, what do you think Eunuch Xiao wants to do at home? I don't know. We'll know when he comes. He bent his finger and knocked on her forehead. It's your turn. Don't be distracted. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. She covered her head and cried exaggeratedly. In fact, the Big Ice Cube's strength was not strong at all, but it was much lighter than when they first met 5 years ago. In the past, he had been dealing with the burly men in the military camp, so he had not been so polite. Later on, when he met her, he realized that women were really made of glass. They would shatter at the slightest touch, so he subconsciously controlled his strength, afraid that he would hurt her. Now he had spoiled her to the point that she was out of control. She was going to tear the tiles off the roof. Just as Qiao Ji was about to go upstairs, he heard laughter coming from upstairs. He couldn't help but be startled. This was His Royal Highness's voice? For so many years, he had never heard His Highness laugh so happily. He couldn't help but feel a little happy. It turned out that His Highness also had such a side. But when he thought of His Majesty's summons today, his heart couldn't help but sink again. Under the scary lead, he slowly walked up the stairs. After hearing the sound of wooden planks, Xiao Su had already restrained the smile on his face and returned to normal. Chu Qingyan was carefully choosing the chess pieces that looked pleasing to the eye, and preparing to place them. It wasn't until Eunuch Qiao's figure appeared that she looked at the stairs with a faint smile. This old servant greets His Highness and Miss Chu. Eunuch Qiao stepped forward and bowed. As far as his eyes could see, His Royal Highness's indifferent expression was still the same as always. If he hadn't heard the laughter just now, he would still think that His Highness would always only have this side of him. Moreover, the maids standing beside him all looked normal. It was obvious that they were used to His Highness like this. He was both gratified and emotional that His Highness could be happy, but he didn't forget the purpose of his visit today. Your Highness, His Majesty has asked for you to enter the palace. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan turned her head to look at Xiao, who was seriously looking at the chess game. He didn't even raise his head and said unhurriedly, "Did Imperial Father say what it was about?" Eunuch Xiao became even more respectful. His Majesty didn't say clearly. Xiao furrowed his brows slightly. It wasn't clear what he was thinking. Chu Qingyan propped up her chin with both hands and smiled sweetly at Eunuch Xiao. In a cute tone she said, "Eunuch Xiao, then did His Majesty mention anything before? After all, His Majesty is so dignified. My Highness also needs to be mentally prepared. Otherwise, what if he says or does something wrong?" Chu Qingyan was only a 15-year-old girl. To many people, she was still young. Her appearance was already outstanding, and right now, her extremely cute and obedient appearance was very easy to bribe. For example, Eunuch Xiao standing in front of her. Although he felt that what Chu Qingyan was worried about wouldn't happen, he was still moved by compassion. He said to the two of them, "Before this, His Majesty received news that General Li will be arriving in the capital today." Xiao's eyes flickered slightly, but he quickly fell silent. Chu Qingyan thought of the transfer of military power that Sichuan Emperor had mentioned before, and her heart immediately burst with joy. Could it be that Sichuan Emperor intended for them to formally transfer military power? At this thought, her eyes lit up even more. She stared straight at the large block of ice in front of her. Xiao was amused by her sparkling eyes. Then he picked up a chess piece and casually placed it down, chuckling. "Wait for me to come back and solve this game for you." Eunuch Xiao was stunned by his smile. So it wasn't that His Highness didn't know how to smile, but that he only revealed his true emotions in front of the people he cared about. He couldn't help but look at Chu Qingyan, who was staring at him with puffed-up cheeks. Suddenly, an indescribable bitterness flashed through his heart. He didn't know if he would be able to see His Highness smile like this again today. Chu Qingyan only had time to look down at the chessboard after the sound of footsteps faded away. The large block of ice was so hateful. It actually blocked her path. No wonder he said he would come back and wait for him to solve it. Humph. Chapter 1298. The rain was getting heavier and heavier. For Pang Zhijing, who didn't have any protection, the raindrops were like stones, pounding on her body and causing her great pain. The rainwater flowed down her face, and her wet hair stuck to her face, making it itchy. But she didn't care about anything else. She steered the horse forward with a clear goal in mind. Although her body's memory was that she knew how to ride a horse, her bones wouldn't be able to withstand a real battle. Moreover, she had to rush forward with all her might. However, she had to reach Xiao before those people tried to assassinate him. She had to warn him. She had to catch up. "Xiao, nothing can happen to you." She clenched her teeth and held the reins even tighter. Although her vision was blurry, she struggled to keep her eyes open. Her heart was stretched into a thin line. The horse seemed to feel her anxiety, and its forelegs stomped even harder. Like a bolt of lightning, it shuttled back and forth in the rain. Xiao, who was sitting in the carriage, felt something and covered his chest. Just now his heartbeat seemed to be a bit strange. This was something that had never happened before. He frowned slightly and reached out to lift the curtain. The cold wind mixed with moisture suddenly poured in and hit his face, instantly waking him up a lot. "Where are we?" It was dark outside. He could barely see the trees, but it was hard to tell where he was. "Lord, we have already reached Fengtai Mountain." The subordinate replied. "Where are General Li and the others?" "They have already started to enter the mountain path." The subordinate continued to reply. "Very good. Wait until we are halfway up Fengtai Mountain. Then we can directly send out the signal." Xiao temporarily put the small episode of his irregular heartbeat to the back of his mind. At this time, he was more concerned about the implementation of this plan. Another half an hour passed. A small cluster of flames appeared in the air. Because the sky was dark, this faint light became the most conspicuous point. Suddenly, the wind and clouds surged. The slowly moving carriage suddenly encountered an obstacle. The carriage suddenly stopped, and Xiaoho's gentle voice came out. "Why did you stop the carriage?" "Your Majesty, Lord, we are surrounded by bandits." Suddenly, a cry of alarm came from inside the carriage. "Bandits? You actually dare to snatch it from me?" The bandits who were being talked about sneered. "We're not bandits. We're here to take your lives. Xiaoho, prepare to die." As soon as he finished speaking, the black-clothed men immediately flashed their weapons. Stepping on the rein, they immediately rushed towards the carriage in an aggressive manner. The guards who were protecting the carriage had already drawn their weapons. Seeing this, they immediately went up and started fighting with these people. The sounds of weapons clashing and shouting were drowned out by the sound of wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. At this time, Xiaoho slowly lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked at the blood that was slowly spreading out. His eyebrows turned, and at the other end of the mountain path, the blurry image of a group of carriages and horses slowly appeared. Although he couldn't see the people clearly, he already knew who they were. He gently curled the corners of his mouth, revealing a determined smile. "General, there seems to be a fight in front." A soldier saw the chaotic battle in front, and immediately ran to the side of the carriage to report to the people inside. As soon as he finished speaking, the curtain of the carriage was lifted, revealing a middle-aged man with a curly beard and wearing armor. This person was Li Weiyuan. He narrowed his pair of sharp eyes and said in a rough voice, "First investigate clearly. Is it a Jianghu vendetta, a bandit robbery, or some other reason?" "Yes." The soldier immediately trotted away and quickly returned. "General, there are people trying to assassinate the people in the carriage. Their methods are cruel, and it doesn't seem like a robbery." At this time, the carriage had already moved closer, and the silhouettes of those people could be seen. Li Weiyuan frowned. Looking at those people's clothes, they seemed to be guards. This place wasn't far from the capital, and it was also the only way to Hugua Temple. It seemed that some aristocratic family wanted to go up the mountain to pray for blessings. However, looking at this situation, it was very likely that it was related to the internal strife of the aristocratic families. If he interfered, he was afraid that he would be contaminated. However, if he turned a blind eye to it, it would give other people something to use against him. He was afraid that he couldn't avoid being implicated. "General, these people are blocking the road. What should we do?" The deputy general urged his horse to the side and asked. "Deputy General Xiao, send a group of people forward to help. Conserve your strength. There's no need to use too much strength." Li Weiyuan thought for a moment and gave the order. Deputy General Xiao, who had been by his side for so many years, understood the general's meaning. It was nothing more than to intervene and help, but not completely. He couldn't waste his own strength. Whether those people were killed or the black-clothed people ran away when they saw them, they couldn't offend either side and had done their best to be humane. Yes. Deputy General Xiao counted his men and prepared to go forward. However, at this time, a green figure fell out of the carriage. Then, trembling with fear, he stood up by holding onto the shaft of the carriage. And Li Weiyuan just happened to see this scene. His eyes couldn't help but widen. Wasn't that Lord Yi? Deputy General Xiao, quickly go save them." Deputy General Xiao didn't understand, but Li Weiyuan had already taken his broadsword and rushed towards the crowd. They were so shocked that they immediately followed. Xiaoho, who was holding onto the carriage, saw that the originally unorganized carriages suddenly rushed over. He smiled in a low voice. He knew that committee member Li was always indifferent. Unless it was related to his interests, he wouldn't meddle in other people's business. He didn't know whether it was the people's fortune or misfortune to have such a person as a general. That was why he revealed his identity. He didn't believe that Li Weiyuan would dare to ignore him, a prince here. "Your Highness, I'm here to save you." Li Weiyuan quickly arrived in front of him and cut the black-clothed man who was about to wield his sword in half. "General Li, thank you so much for your help. Otherwise, I would have lost my life here," Xiaoho said gratefully. Li Weiyuan immediately stood in front of him and said, "Your Highness, don't worry. I'll protect you. You guys take good care of your Highness." After that, he waved his broadsword and fought with the black-clothed men who swarmed over. Xiao chuckled, and then gave a look to the leader of the black-clothed men. The black-clothed man understood tacitly, and ordered his men to distract the soldiers around Xiao. Then he brandished his sword and rushed toward Xiao. Xiao still had a subtle smile on his face. He wanted Li Weiyuan to see him get hurt. This was the most important step in his plan. Looking at the sword light in front of him, he sneered, "Xiao Su, from now on, you may bear the infamy of being a killer. Congratulations." "No!" An exclamation broke into the curtain of rain, but was drowned out by the fierce wind and rain. Xiao felt his heart beat erratically again. He looked up as if he had sensed something. The sword light was close at hand. In his eyes, a pink figure rushed towards him like a flying disc. His pupils suddenly dilated. Chapter 1299. How could it be her? How could she be here? Xiao couldn't care less about the tip of the sword that was close to his eyelashes. He slapped the ground with one hand, trying to circulate his internal force to stop her. However, he spat out a mouthful of blood. This morning, he didn't care about the internal injury. But at this time, when he was circulating his internal force, it suddenly flared up. His blood flowed backward and blocked his meridians, making him unable to move for a while. Everything happened too suddenly, in the blink of an eye. However, for Xiao, it was like torture in slow motion. Looking at the rushing figure and the tip of the sword that was close at hand, an inexplicable panic spread from his heart to his limbs. "Xiao, I'm here." The person who was dripping wet smiled and opened her arms, hugging him without hesitation. "No." Puff! The sound of the sword piercing flesh. The person who hugged him stiffened, and his eyes widened in an instant. Torai, who was covered with a black cloth, didn't expect that the princess would suddenly appear under his sword. At this time, Xiao's trembling hand held onto her shoulder and slowly placed her in his arms. He didn't dare to touch her chest that was dyed red with blood. His pale white fingers brushed away the hair that stuck to her face, revealing a pale but smiling face. His heart was sucked out bit by bit as blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Why are you here?" The voice was no longer his. Pang Zhijing opened her eyes. After a while, she saw the person in front of her. Did she see wrongly? There seemed to be a lot of emotions in his eyes: worry, sadness, pain. "I went back to the station and heard that Tori and the others were plotting to assassinate you. I was worried, so I wanted to come and warn you, but I didn't expect to be late," she said intermittently. Her chest hurt so much that she began to hallucinate. The Xiao in front of her seemed to have something cracked in his eyes. His eyes were filled with regret and helplessness. It turned out that it was because of his plan. Xiao was stunned on the spot. If little rascal knew that this murder was planned by him, would she still be so honest and look at him wholeheartedly? He said with great difficulty, "You're stupid. I'll be fine. Even if everyone here dies, I'll still be fine. Do you know that? Why are you so stupid?" She coughed softly and stared at him helplessly. Unfortunately, it was not lethal at all. "I'm already injured like this. Can you stop scolding me?" "Okay, I won't scold you. I just sealed your acupoints and stopped your bleeding. Now I'll take you home to treat your injuries." Just now he had taken her pulse. Although her wound was on her chest, the sword had deviated slightly and did not hurt her heart. This was a blessing in disguise. When he learned of this fact, his heart flew from hell to heaven. Fortunately, but if he let it go on like this, the wound would get infected and corrode her heart. Even the gods would not be able to save her. Just now he had forcefully opened up the clogged blood vessels. Although it was very harmful to the body and almost made him unable to stand up, he did not care so much at this time. He did not want to borrow other people's hands because only he could touch his woman. He reached out and picked her up. Although the blood in his body was still surging, he did not show it on his face. Go home?" She raised her eyebrows. She had almost forgotten her promise with Qing Yan. She struggled to get down but was held down by him. "Don't move, the wound will bleed." He lowered his head and said softly, She was stunned, and then pursed her lips. Can you send me back to the relay station? What do you think? Xiao gave her an ambiguous answer, and then planned to walk towards the carriage. Pang Zhijing wanted to say something, but her mind was already in a mess and she slowly lost consciousness. Tori looked at Xiao who was about to leave, and immediately turned around to stop him. Lord, you can't go. Our plan has not. Scram. Xiao expressionlessly spat out a word and then walked past him. The little rascal's breath was already a little weak. He could not delay any longer. Xiao sent her to the carriage in a panic, and then ordered people to quickly return to the city. At this time, he could no longer care about the big plan of framing him, or the hatred of his family. His heart and eyes were only filled with this little rascal in front of him. He held her tightly in his arms and stroked her eyebrows with his fingers. His lips moved slightly. Why are you so stupid to come and save me? Fool. However, no one saw that in the storm, dozens of figures were jumping on the trees, like ghosts following the speeding carriage. The arrows on their shoulders flashed with a cold green light. At the same time, Xiao stepped into the imperial palace and slowly walked down the corridor. At the end of the corridor was the imperial study room. A sudden clap of thunder sounded in the sky. His eyebrows moved slightly and he looked away to the horizon. His eyes were slightly heavy, as if he was recalling something. He remembered that every time there was a thunderstorm, there would be a bad experience. For as long as he could remember, on stormy nights, his mother would smash everything in the palace and point at him, scolding and punishing him to vent the anger in her heart. Later, he learned that Consort was afraid of thunder. Every time there was a thunderstorm, his father would accompany her. His mother was angry and helpless. On his birthday when he was 10 years old, there was also a heavy rain like this. His father was absent from his banquet, and went to accompany Xiao who had a high fever. He waited for a day and a night. Then the next day, a fire burned down his entire palace and the innocent him who was waiting. He remembered that 7 years ago, Fengling brought people to stop the enemy. When he arrived, blood flowed like a river and the wind and rain formed a grave. Those graves were personally buried by him. 5 years ago, there was also a heavy rain like this at the palace banquet. Xiao was assassinated and his life was uncertain. His father, Consort suspected that he was the culprit and did not want him to see Xiao. He could only kneel in the rain and not get up. His father, the emperor's distrust, and his mother, the emperor's ridicule, were still vivid in his mind. The most recent incident was when he entered a black inn. He did not pay attention and the little fellow was taken away. When he brought people over, he only saw the little fellow lying in the wind and rain, barely breathing. After that, the four sides moved to kill him. He had clearly sent her to a safe place, but just as he was about to accept his fate, she returned and appeared in front of him like a firework. It was also raining heavily. He and her were almost separated by life and death. And in the 5 years that he was with her, he was fortunate to have a trace of peace. Every year when there was a storm, she was by his side. There was no conflict, no darkness, no misunderstanding, no assassination. It was peaceful and safe. She was the one who warmed his years and stunned his life. He slightly curled his lips into a smile, but the smile quickly disappeared from his eyes. Today, there was still a storm raging between heaven and earth. It was very similar to the previous few times. He turned back to look at the palace door in front of him, and felt an indescribable irritation in his heart. Chapter 1300. Your Highness, His Majesty is waiting for you inside. Eunuch Xiao was a bit confused when he saw His Royal Highness stop in front of the door, but he still reminded him. Xiao didn't say anything. He turned to the side and pushed open the door. The heavy door was pushed open from the outside, and the sound echoed in the empty hall. Although he didn't know where this feeling of unease came from, he had to face it today. He didn't hesitate to step in. The Sichuan emperor was standing in front of a portrait, looking up and admiring it. When he heard the voice behind him, he didn't turn around. Instead, he said calmly, "You're here." Xiao lowered his head slightly, bowed, and then asked, "Yes, I have come as ordered. What matter does Imperial Father have for me?" "Come here." The Sichuan emperor turned and beckoned him over. Xiao Su hesitated for a moment before walking over. However, he didn't walk side by side with the Sichuan emperor. Instead, he stood a step behind him. I have a question for you. Please ask, Imperial Father. The Sichuan emperor pointed at the painting on the wall and asked with a smile. Do you know who painted this painting? Xiao Su turned to look at the painting. There was no name on the painting, but he could tell that it was a good painting. He answered truthfully, I don't know. The Sichuan emperor put one hand behind his back and stroked his beard with the other. He said slowly, this painting was painted by the painting saint Lu Xiran. Lu Xiran? Is it the one who was cut in half at the waist 6 years ago? Xiao Su was a bit surprised. That's right. The Sichuan emperor's eyes darkened. He was a famous painter and was greatly favored by me. However, I can't tolerate being lied to. Therefore, I was very angry when he said that a tiger painted as a cat was actually a cat. Although I cherish talents, I can't allow others to lie to me. Xiao Su didn't know why his imperial father suddenly brought this up. Although he didn't show it on his face, he already had his suspicions. The Sichuan emperor glanced at the people beside him, then turned and walked back to the dragon throne to sit down. It's been so long, but I haven't asked about the soldiers who fought in the war with Nan Song. Many of them didn't enter the capital to receive their rewards. I don't know if you've settled them down. We can't do without people at the borders. The War of the Southern Blue Mountains consumed too much manpower and military strength. In order to prevent the neighboring countries from seizing the opportunity to invade, the majority of them stayed behind to guard the borders. Although they didn't enter the capital to receive their rewards, Imperial Father didn't treat them unfairly. The imperial edict to reward them according to their merits has been issued, and it's extremely generous. Of the matter, the Sichuan emperor nodded. They're all good men of Sichuan. It's thanks to them that we were able to protect this region. He suddenly changed the topic. I remember that in the army, there's a very outstanding youth called Chu Yan. Xiao Su's pupils shrank. He didn't know why his imperial father suddenly brought this up, but he still calmly said, that's right. Although he's young, he's brave and resourceful. He's a rare talent. The Sichuan emperor's eyes were full of praise, but his tone was doubtful. I've also heard that many generals are full of praise for him. But why isn't he in this trip to the capital? Also, why isn't he in the list of rewards you drafted? Did you miss it or? Xiao Su lowered his eyebrows. He was originally going to follow I to the capital, but something happened at home, so he left. He also said that he won't enter the court as an official. However, if the people are in trouble, he will still step forward. This kind of talent is hard to come by. However, I've heard that Chu Yan has no parents. He's an orphan. How could something happen at home? Could it be? The Sichuan emperor's tone changed. He looked at Xiao Su with a faint smile and said, is it because you're unwilling to let him enter the court as an official, or you don't want him to appear in front of me? Xiao Su's fingers slowly clenched. The bad guess in his heart had been confirmed. He still said in a normal voice, I don't dare. The Sichuan emperor acted as if he didn't hear him and continued. In fact, Chu Yan also entered the capital, but no one recognized him. Don't you think that imperial father is right? Xiao Su pursed his lips. Chu Yan, Chu Qingyan. It's a difference of one character. It's actually easy to guess, but no one has ever connected the two together. Am I right? The West Xian emperor's words were as light as a feather, but it was as if a heavy stone had fallen on his shoulder. In an instant, his back stiffened. The carriage sped along the mountain path of Feng Tai Mountain. Unfortunately, it could only slow down because of the heavy wind and rain. This mountain path wasn't easy to travel on. It was also raining, so there were potholes everywhere. In addition, the visibility was too low, so the carriage stumbled along. Pang Zhijing slowly woke up because of the bumpy road. The soft cough startled Xiao Ho, who was using his internal energy to dry her clothes. He grabbed her hand and looked at her with joy. You're awake. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Pang Zhijing took a deep breath before complaining to him. You're hugging me too tightly. Does that count? You can still joke. It means that your injuries are stable. Although he said this, he still loosened his grip on her. He didn't know why, But when he saw her face that was so pale that it almost disappeared, he couldn't help but want to tightly hug her. That way he could feel that she was still alive. Feeling that her wet clothes had become dry, she was a bit surprised. However, when she raised her head to ask him, she found that his lips were very pale and his complexion was not good. There was even a faint trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It was like something was stabbing her heart. "What's wrong? Did those people hurt you?" She said this, feeling both angry and distressed. Xiao gently smiled. "They can't touch me. This is the side effect of the poison from last night. As long as I rest well for 2 days, I'll be fine. Don't worry." She nodded her head. Thinking of how terrifying the poison was last night, she still felt a lingering fear. Fortunately, everything was already over. She felt a gentle caress on her face. Slightly stunned, she raised her eyes and met his gentle eyes. It was different from the gentleness that could not be found in his eyes in the past. This was a gentleness that came from his heart. She blinked. Why did this person suddenly change his personality and treat her so well? Could it be because she saved him last night? She was someone who couldn't hide her feelings. She couldn't help but say, "Xiao, I'm not used to you suddenly being so nice to me." "I'm being nice to you, but you don't like it. What a headache." He raised his hand and gently scratched her nose. His voice was helpless but filled with endless affection. However, this intimate action made her feel even more flattered. She hurriedly said, "Xiao, if you feel bad because I helped you with the poison last night, and you feel that you have tarnished a girl's innocence and want to take responsibility, I'm telling you that there's no need for that. Although chastity is important where we come from, it's not as important as it is to you. Moreover, the women where we come from won't reject a man because he has an ex, and the men won't reject a woman because she has a boyfriend before." So, suddenly, she felt that the surrounding air had become very cold. Then Xiao's expression became very, very scary. Chapter 1301. So what? Tell me. Xiao smiled faintly as he leaned against the wall of the car. With one hand on her shoulder and the other supporting his chin, he looked at her calmly, as though he was all ears. However, his expression made Pang Zhijing shudder. How was this all ears? She was afraid that when she finished speaking, he would make her wash her neck clean. Because of that plus reason, that's it. She immediately shook her head. She wasn't that stupid to move her neck closer. He touched her face when he heard that, and said gently yet threateningly, "Don't mention other men in front of me in the future. Otherwise, you will know the consequences." Why did she feel that there was a domineering aura around him? Could it be that her eyes were playing tricks on her? Also, they had only been intimate for one night. Why did he change when she woke up? "Don't tell me you want to be rough with me?" She harumphed. "Rough?" Xiao repeated the word and chuckled. "I don't hit women, but I can change my method for you." What the hell? Why did he suddenly lower his head? When he entered her lips, her brain was in a state of crash. Because she was seriously injured, he could only stop at the beginning. He stood up with a bit of desire and saw her dazed expression. He curled his lips into a smile and couldn't help but hug her even tighter. Finally, her face was no longer red and he pinched her face. Pang Zhijing felt the warm touch on her face and instantly returned to her senses. Looking at the person who was obsessed with pinching her face, her initial shyness turned to annoyance, and then to anger. "Xiao, you pervert! You can't casually do that to me anymore." She couldn't say the word kiss. "What is that?" Seeing that she was in a better mood, Xiao was in the mood to tease her. "That?" she retorted with a slightly red face. Xiao laughed softly. "Are you talking about hugging you and kissing you? How can you say that out loud?" She was a reserved lady, and her mind automatically filtered out her initiative last night. "Why not? Shouldn't you be responsible for what you did to me last night? I'm just hugging and kissing my future wife. What's wrong with that? Have you forgotten what you did to me last night? Do you want to be a heartless woman?" The person who had been teasing her elegantly just a moment ago had turned into the image of a pitiful man who had been abandoned. If she wasn't the person involved, she might have been deceived by his appearance. After all, people with good looks could easily move people's hearts. However, she pursed her lips. Xiao, you're too shameless. I'm the one who's at a disadvantage. You actually inverted right and wrong. You've gone too far. If it wasn't for the fact that she was so weak, she would have raised her finger and pointed at his nose and scolded him. He switched back to his original appearance in a second, but his voice was even more affectionate. Then I'll be responsible for you. There are still 10 days until our wedding. I'll find the best doctor for you. Although you can't fully recover in this time, at least you won't have a problem walking. We can even go through the wedding ceremony as usual. She was about to die from this gentle voice, but she knew very well that the reason why he was willing to marry her now, and not like before when he was forced to accept her, was because she had saved his life last night, in exchange for a woman's most precious thing. Xiao, you don't have to force yourself. I won't regret any of the decisions I make. So you should just forget about what happened last night. I won't be going to the king's palace later. She really didn't regret it because this person was someone she cared about in her heart. Forgot? Xiao raised his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes as he approached her. You're planning to leave me? He suddenly remembered how she and Chu Qingyan had plotted to escape. Although he knew that they wouldn't succeed, when he thought of her leaving him, he was angry. Pang Zhijing's body froze. It can't be. How could he see through it so easily? Did she say something wrong? No, I'm planning to go back to the relay station. If I don't go back, Luer will be worried. Why aren't you worried about me? Xiao's soft voice was drowned out by the sound of thunder. What did you say? She blinked. You've already taken my family's family heirloom, and you still want to go back on your words? Xiao coldly looked at her. Family heirloom? What kind of ghost was that? Seeing her blank expression, it was clear that her brain wasn't working properly. He could only kindly remind her. Did you not notice that there's something extra in your hand? At this time, she looked down and Jasper's bracelet appeared in front of her eyes. She couldn't help opening her eyes wide. You're talking about this? That's right, this is what mother left for her future daughter-in-law. It would be a hindrance for me to keep it here, so I put it on for you. I didn't think that it would look so good. He grabbed her wrist and seriously looked at it. After all, he was the one who chose her as his wife, so of course he had good taste. After nodding his head in affirmation, he held her finger. Under her shocked gaze, he slowly said, So no matter if we're married or not, no matter where, you will always be my, Xiao's wife. This is a fact that cannot be changed. She stared at him in a daze, feeling like she was dreaming. Was this still the Xiao she knew? Then at this time, the carriage suddenly shook violently. Pang Zhijing's wound was shaken, and she couldn't help coughing. Xiao's face instantly turned cold. What's going on? Someone immediately replied from outside. Lord, we've been surrounded. The wind outside was strong, but inside the imperial study, it was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Imperial Father, did you misunderstand something? Xiao Su's face was still calm and collected. Even if the dragon's might was suddenly released, he was still as immovable as a mountain. Misunderstood? Sichuan Emperor chuckled. Not long after you arrived in Lian City, a 10-year-old youth suddenly appeared by your side. He's smart and sensitive, and he helped you deal with government affairs bit by bit. Chu Qingyan rarely appeared in the crowd. When you went to the battlefield, she also disappeared. However, Chu Yan has always followed you closely. This time, Chu Yan disappeared, but Chu Qingyan appeared. This could also be a coincidence. Xiao Su indifferently replied. Is that so? Then can you make the two of them appear at the same time to confront each other? Sichuan Emperor lightly chided. Xiao Su narrowed his eyes. A trace of displeasure appeared in his eyes, but he hid it extremely well. Seeing that he didn't say anything, Sichuan Emperor heavily slammed the table. His voice was deep and angry. Xiao Su, how long are you going to keep me in the dark? The wrath of a monarch wasn't something that anyone could resist. Xiao Su felt the strong pressure, but he still stood firm. He slowly raised his head. His eyes seemed to contain a turbulent whirlpool, but also seemed like the surface of a calm lake. He softly chuckled. Imperial Father, you've been beating around the bush with I for so long. What exactly do you want to say? Why don't you say it directly? Chapter 1302. He knew that he should keep his cool at this time, but as long as it involved the little fellow, it was too difficult for him to swallow his anger. Because he couldn't. This was probably the first time his son had spoken to him in such an unfriendly tone. Szechuan Emperor was stunned at first, then his face darkened. So you can't hide it anymore? Xiao Su, let me see how far you can go. Su, you're wrong. Su, or what you said is wrong. You let a woman disguise herself as a man and sneak into the barracks. This method is deceiving the hundreds of thousands of soldiers. After all, there are military rules that forbid women from joining the army. Once discovered, beheading is a light punishment. What's more, this is deceiving the emperor. Once exposed, Chu will definitely not be able to escape the punishment of 9 generations of her family. As a prince, although your crime does not warrant death, it will be difficult for you to escape the condemnation of the officials. Imperial Father, I admit that Ayan is indeed Chu Yan. This is the truth. I can't deny that I didn't think it through and allowed her to participate in the battle. Thinking about it, Imperial Father has already made sufficient preparations. There are witnesses and evidence. Since that's the case, there's nothing to deny. Xiao Su continued. When she followed I to the army, it wasn't because she wanted to participate in the battle. When I took over the army, there weren't many capable generals left. That's why Ayan was sent to lead the army. She was trained by I, so I clearly knew how scheming she was. Furthermore, at that critical moment, I could only use people he was familiar with to reduce the friction. That's why he was able to move quickly. That's why he was forced to do so. Continue. Szechuan Emperor's voice deepened. His expression was unreadable. Although women are not allowed to appear in the 3 armies, we can't be stubborn. We have to be flexible. Although Ayan is a woman, she is a rare talent. In the Battle of the Southern Heavens, she didn't lose to any of the generals. She achieved many military achievements. Furthermore, she didn't have any ulterior motives. After the battle in the Southern Blue region ended, she immediately withdrew from the 3 armies and no longer participated in any decision-making. After Xiao Su finished speaking, he cupped his hands and pleaded, Imperial Father, please look at what she has done and not pursue the crime of deceiving the emperor. The West Xiandarch stroked his beard and looked at Xiao Su silently. What Xiao Su said was very reasonable. Chu Qingyan was indeed a rare talent, and it was precisely because of this that the West Xiandarch could not keep Chu Qingyan by his side. It was like adding wings to a tiger. What the West Xiandarch wanted to do today was to break this pair of wings. Moreover, he had another reason. What you said isn't without reason. However, a country has its laws and a family has its rules. There's no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. Even if I help you hide it, if it's exposed one day, you won't be able to escape the blame of the world. If Imperial Father feels that it's difficult to explain to the world, then I have a way. Xiao Su said without hesitation. Ayan's contributions will offset her mistakes. If it's not enough, I is willing to give up my status and voluntarily become a commoner. I only want to appease Imperial Father's anger and the world's blame. Szechuan Emperor looked at his son in a daze. He suddenly felt that he had never understood him in all these years, just like how he couldn't guess his son's thoughts at all. It had to be said that this was the best way. Not only would it make him hand over his military power and all his authority, it would also clear the path for Ranner's future. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. However, this wasn't his ultimate goal. Szechuan Emperor looked at Xiao Su and guided him patiently. You've made great contributions to the country and the people for so many years. You've achieved success and fame. Are you going to give it all up for a woman and bear a bad reputation? Is it worth it? Although Szechuan Emperor's words seemed to be admonishing him, Xiao Su understood the hidden meaning behind them. In I's life, once I make a decision, I never regret it. Xiao Su lowered his head and said resolutely, Don't be in a hurry to make a decision. Actually, I also have a way to suppress this matter. However, I don't know if you can accept this method. Szechuan Emperor's gaze fell on him as he said this. There was an indescribable meaning in his eyes. Xiao Su looked up at him and said calmly, Imperial Father, please give me some pointers. Sichuan Emperor smiled and narrowed his eyes. It's very simple. Find a more powerful protection for Chu Las. Xiao Su frowned and looked at him in confusion. You're going to leave the capital in the future and have no military power. If the matter is exposed, you won't be able to protect her at all. So if you really care about this girl, don't keep her by your side. Sichuan Emperor suddenly changed the topic. He didn't care about Xiao Su's cold aura at all. You know that Ranner likes this girl very much, right? He doesn't eat or drink because of her. Now he's even bedridden. It's inevitable that he's a bit rash when he's young and knows what it's like to be in love with her. As an older brother, you should be considerate of him. The hidden meaning of these words was to ask him to send Yin to fourth brother? Because his fourth brother was very likely to be the next crown prince, so it was safer for Yin to stay by his side? What kind of logic was this? Imperial Father, are you serious? Xiao Su's face darkened. He didn't try to hide his emotions. It was as if he had just walked out of a glacier, bringing with him a fierce wind and snow. At the same time, in front of Xiao Ho's carriage stood a row of men in black with bows and arrows drawn. They didn't come with good intentions. Xiao Ho lifted the curtain and saw the scene. At this moment, the leader of the men in black waved his hand and released arrows. Dozens of arrows flew through the air toward them. Poochie, many of the guards on both sides were killed by the arrows. Xiao Ho's face turned cold. Charge! Everyone immediately rushed toward the men in black. However, they were a bit far away. As the arrows flew over, many people fell dauntlessly on the road. Some of the arrows pierced through the curtain of rain and attacked the carriage. Xiao Ho sat as steady as a mountain. He held an arrow between his fingers and used this arrow to knock down the other arrows. Pang Zhijing curled up in his embrace. When she saw this scene, she should have felt fear and terror. However, the warmth in his embrace seemed to have isolated her from the danger. It made her feel at ease and she couldn't help but want to rely on it. Although Xiao Ho's men had suffered many casualties, they didn't fear death and continued to press forward. This caused the men in black to be unable to shoot any more arrows, and could only change weapons to attack. However, the men in black had come prepared. They had a large number of people. Xiao Ho's men quickly became one-sided. At this moment, someone jumped onto the carriage and dealt with the coachman. He then chopped off the horse's head. The carriage lost its horse and for a moment, it lost its direction. However, its forelegs still maintained a running posture as it charged toward the cliff on the side. The cliff was close at hand. Xiao Ho made a prompt decision. He picked up the person in his embrace and broke the wall of the carriage with his palm. He quickly jumped out of the carriage with her in his arms. However, the men in black who had been waiting on both sides rushed forward and brandished their weapons at him. Chapter 1303. There were people rushing in from all directions, as well as hidden weapons everywhere. If he was at his peak, all of this would not be a problem. Even if he was seriously injured, he could still barely protect himself. But to let go of the person in his arms, he could not do it. Pang Zhijing was tightly held in his arms, with her head pressed against his chest. She could not see anything around her, but she could feel the clamor all around her, as well as the muffled groans coming from the people close to her. Her heart was fiercely clenched as her hands tightly grabbed onto his sleeves. Xiao Ho, nothing can happen to you. The two of them were like a kite with a broken string as they were ruthlessly thrown out, rolling several times on the slope. Little rascal, are you all right? Rolling in the mud, Xiao Ho, who was covered in mud, immediately picked up the person on the ground and carefully checked her body to see if she was injured again. She lightly coughed and opened her eyes to look at him. His face was mixed with rain and mud, making it almost impossible to distinguish his face, but his eyes were still so bright that it made her heart feel warm. I'm fine. Just as she said those words, she saw a black-clothed man appear behind him. He stretched out his leg and ruthlessly kicked at his back. Danger! Xiao Ho did not pay attention for a moment and fell into the rain. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and just as he raised his head, he saw the black-clothed man raise his sword at Little Rascal. His eyes turned red. Little Rascal! Before the sword fell, Pang Zhijing used all her strength to roll to the side, avoiding a disaster. Xiao saw that the black-clothed man did not hurt her, and was about to get up, but his eyes suddenly shrank. "Little rascal, I'll save you." Because this place was a cliff, the place she rolled down was a steep slope. At this time, she could not bear the force and rolled down the slope. If she continued to roll down like this, the bottom would be the cliff. There had never been a moment when Xiao hated himself so much for not being able to catch the person he wanted to protect. He was seriously injured and could not keep up with the person who was rolling faster and faster. Pang Zhijing bit her lips. Although her body was in pain from being cut by the gravel along the way, and her wounds began to bleed again, she didn't dare to cry out because she knew that it would only worsen Xiao's worries. Suddenly, her body was suspended in the air. She was thrown off the slope and spun in the air. She looked carefully and saw the bottomless abyss below. Her heart suddenly shrank, as if it had stopped beating. His body paused in midair for a moment before falling down. Was it going to end? She slowly closed her eyes. A voice pierced through the rain and reached her ears. "Little rascal." Her wrist was suddenly grabbed, and her body stopped falling. She opened her eyes in disbelief, only to see her wrist being tightly grasped by a slender hand covered in blood. Looking up, she saw a gentle jade-like face. His black hair fluttered in the air, making his already pale face seem even more bloodless. "Little rascal, reach out your other hand and hold me tight." At this time, he was only holding on to one of Little Rascal's hands, but because of the rain, their hands were slowly falling apart. It was very unreliable. At this time, she saw that his body was also suspended in the air. He was just holding on to a bunch of vines on the edge of the cliff. At this time, because the vines were bearing the weight of two people, the roots that had drilled into the soil were slowly being pulled down. Maybe in the next moment, the vines would completely break away from the soil and the two of them would fall off the cliff. And at this time he was seriously injured. His clothes were not intact and were covered in mud and blood. She knew that this was the price he had to pay to protect her. The sound of the sword piercing into flesh was like a demonic sound, ringing in her ears again and again. He might be able to protect himself like this, but for her, he stepped into the bottomless abyss. Below him was a desperate situation. "We're in such a sorry state." Looking at his face that was covered in mud and was unrecognizable, as well as the person who was normally obsessed with cleanliness, she softly said, "It's fine. After we go back, we'll properly clean it up. Quick, reach out your other hand and hold on to me. I'm only holding on to your wrist, it's not reliable." At this time, Xiao did not have the mind to care about his dirty body. He only cared about having her put her other hand on his. "The vines seem like they're about to break," she muttered. "Don't pay attention to it. Little rascal, give me your hand first, do you hear me?" Her hand kept sliding down, and now he could only hold on to her 5 fingers. His palms were sweaty as if he did not see the desperate situation in front of him. He was a bit panicked as he gently coaxed her. "Xiao." She suddenly looked up, and her eyes were like the warm sun shining on spring water. He looked at her. "I'll give you the rest of my life's luck and good fortune. If you finish your revenge, then live well. Find a good girl and live a peaceful and happy life." "Little rascal, what are you saying? Give me your hand." These words made him feel inexplicably uneasy. He could not help but anxiously and helplessly coax her. Pang Zhijing deeply looked at him, as if she wanted to imprint his appearance into her memory, and then seal it forever. In a person's life, there were many times when it was filled with what-ifs and unexpected things happened. For Pang Zhijing, her life was filled with countless what-ifs. Although she had always said that her life did not have what-ifs, only consequences and results. But, if she had not transmigrated here, would she not have encountered so many things that she could not even imagine? If she could escape from Pang Huang's control, escape from Xiao's control, would she be able to live a more carefree life? If she did not fall in love with that person with a warm face but a cold heart, would she not feel so uncomfortable and unable to advance or retreat? She would not be like this, unable to get what she wanted and separated because of love. "Xiao, you probably don't know how much I like you. Because I like you more than you can imagine." I have never regretted anything that I have done. Whether it was falling in love with you, leaving you, saving you, or standing on the edge of life and death with you. I believe that everything that happens in life has its meaning. Although this period of time is not long, it has let me know what is growth, what is love, and what is giving up. 2 people won't be able to survive this vine, but 1 person can. She looked at him gently. No, we will both survive. He shook his head and said with trembling lips, Xiao in the future, don't let yourself be in such a difficult situation. Take care. She smiled as she broke free from his hand, leaving the last of the bright smile on her face to him. I will give you all the good things in my life. You must be happy. The mountain wind blew and instantly swept the pink figure into the abyss. No. His hand was empty and the little rascal that liked to bicker with him disappeared in front of his eyes. His fingers suddenly trembled uncontrollably. Chapter 1304. In the future, don't let yourself get hurt again. Mother can't accompany you anymore. You have to be good. Xiao in the future, don't let yourself be in such a difficult situation. Take care. His mother's voice from more than 10 years ago overlapped with the little rascal's words today, like a sharp blade ruthlessly stabbing into his heart. Why? Everyone who treats him sincerely will leave him in the most tragic way in the end. Why can everyone who does evil live well in this world, while they who bear a blood feud have to taste being separated from their loved ones again and again? Buddha says that there are 8 hardships in life. In just a few years he has tasted them one by one, the pain penetrating his heart. Rainwater entered his eyes and dyed them wet. That pair of eyes that are as gentle as water is now filled with pain and despair. Little rascal, why did you let go of my hand? I would rather fall with you than let go of you. He slowly clenches his empty hand, just like his empty heart. That vine is currently falling down inch by inch, but he doesn't feel it at all. At this moment, he seems to have lost all the light in his eyes. His whole pair of eyes are dim. Peng Zhijing is finally dead. We can be considered to have helped Darren vent Miss Ro's resentment. Go. Quickly go back and report this matter to Darren. Let Darren also be happy. Words of schadenfreude come from above, very ear-piercing. Yu Qingxi. Xiao's eyes emit a cold light, like the coldness of the sun refracting from an iceberg. He gnashes his teeth as he calls out Yu Qingxi's name word by word. His fingers exert force, and his whole body uses the reaction force of the vine being pulled out in an instant to flip over and jump up the hill. Why aren't you dead yet? Ah! The person who just pointed at him is holding his broken hand, looking in horror at the Yama who seems to have come from hell. The people behind him are also frightened and step back. I haven't sent your master to hell yet. How can this king die? He bends down to pick up that person's sword, gently brushing away the broken hand on it, as if he is just sweeping away a withered leaf. As soon as he finished speaking, he flipped his wrist. Instantly, sand and pebbles flew and the world changed. Other than the person with the broken palm, everyone else had their throats slit and died. The man immediately knelt down, trembling as he begged for mercy. Don't kill me, don't kill me. Go back and tell your lord that within half a year, this prince will personally take his head. Tell him to take care of his own life. Don't miss the appointment at that time. Scram! That person was stunned. When he met that pair of threatening eyes, he immediately rolled and crawled toward the curtain of rain. Ding! He plunged the sword into the ground and placed the weight of his entire body on it. After holding on for so long, he had finally reached his limit. The strength in his body was gradually drained. Before he lost consciousness, the image of little rascal's smiling face appeared in his mind. His heart ached, his vision turned black, and he lost consciousness. Violent winds and torrential rain washed over the entire world, and the flowing bloodstains gradually dissipated. Would that person's memories gradually fade away with the passage of time? This will take time to answer. At this moment, the air in the quiet imperial study was filled with the smell of gunpowder. Imperial Father, are you serious? When Xiao Su asked this question without hiding his emotions, the Sichuan Emperor's entire face darkened. Could it be that you're questioning my words? The Sichuan Emperor's voice carried a hint of anger. I naturally wouldn't dare to question Imperial Father's authority. However, this matter concerns the marriage of I and Ian. I naturally have to ask clearly. Otherwise, if I misunderstand, wouldn't I be even more disrespectful to Imperial Father? Xiao Su's words seemed respectful, but there was a hint of sharpness and toughness in his tone. The Sichuan emperor narrowed his eyes, but his tone was still deliberative. He slowly said, Su'er, this matter is indeed difficult for you to accept, but this is for your own good. That last Chu has committed the crime of deceiving the emperor. Not only did she deceive me, but she also deceived the world. If this matter is exposed, wouldn't it be impossible for both of you? Now that there is a method in front of you that can protect both you and her, isn't this the best of both worlds? Xiao Su meaningfully smiled. Ian has deceived many people, but if this matter is spread, I believe that the people won't be so calculative. After all, her merits outweigh her faults. Moreover, her actions on the battlefield have all been witnessed by the soldiers. No one will bite the hand that feeds them. Moreover, if Imperial Father doesn't spread this news, who else will know? Moreover, even if this matter is spread, I and Ian will bear the consequences alone. Imperial Father doesn't need to worry. Su'er, Imperial Father is doing this for your own good. The Sichuan emperor was choked by his words, but he didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed. Imperial Father, if you want to help fourth brother break up I and Ian, then don't say it in such a dignified manner. These words were said without a trace of politeness. Not only was there no respect for the emperor, but there was also a chill that made people tremble. However, this was the real Xiao Su. He had never shown his true self in front of the Sichuan emperor. The Sichuan emperor found that the person in front of him had become very unfamiliar. He couldn't understand this Xiao Su, but the Sichuan emperor didn't plan on beating around the bush with him. That's right. Zhen is doing this for Ranner. Ranner is seriously ill and bedridden because of Chu Qingyan. If it wasn't for Chu Qingyan, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to recover from his illness. As the emperor's older brother, you should be more modest. If you feel that your face is not right, Zhen will compensate you. No matter how many beauties you want, Zhen will arrange them for you. What if I doesn't agree? He coldly replied. Then don't blame Zhen for being impolite. I'm only discussing this with you because I care about our relationship as father and son. The Sichuan emperor's expression was incomparably dignified. His tone was high and mighty, as if he was giving alms. When Xiao Su heard these words, he inexplicably wanted to laugh. This was his imperial father, always using the most legitimate reasons to force him to give up the person he treasured the most. Imperial Father, you've always considered fourth brother being bedridden. Have you ever thought about what would happen if I didn't have Ian? But you've never considered I isn't a stone, he will still feel pain if he's cut. You are the ruler of a country, and the head of a family. I never expected you to be impartial. But at the very least, when you throw I to a corner, don't take what I has in his arms. For so many years, I has been at your beck and call. It's not that he doesn't have a temper, it's just that he hasn't touched his bottom line. If you want anything else, be it military power, wealth, or power, I'll give it all to you. However, they are all worldly possessions for me. I won't even frown. However, you can't touch a single strand of Ian's hair. Because that is the bottom line that I can't touch. Chapter 1305. This rain is really heavy. I almost got soaked all the way here. Huaxiao's voice rang out in the corridor. Just as she finished speaking, another voice echoed, That's right. This kind of weather always makes people inexplicably irritated. Previously, there was a drought, and we prayed to the gods for rain. Now look, it's about to become a flood. It was Yan Luo's voice. Chu Qingyan sat in the pavilion and turned to smile at the two people who were walking over hand in hand. She waved her hand and said, Come and sit here. I'm here today to make tea and nag to relieve my boredom. Huaxiao sat down and cupped her face with her hands, looking gloomy. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but turn to look at Yan Luo. However, Yan Luo was also sprawled on the table, looking gloomy. Don't look at me. I'm in a bad mood too. Hey, what's wrong with the two of you? Why are you in such a bad mood? She teased them. but neither of them paid her any attention. She couldn't help but laugh. Tell me what happened. To be able to make you two buffoons angry, he must not be an ordinary person. Chu Qingyan gently tapped their foreheads, looking very helpless. It was as if the two of them were waiting for her to say this. They immediately scrambled to be the first to speak. Qingyan, you don't know how despicable that miser is. Morong really pisses me off. You don't even know. Their voices overlapped and pierced her ears. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but cover her ears. She pointed at them and said, "Can't the two of you talk properly? One at a time." Pang Zhijing and Xiao looked at each other, sparks flying. Suddenly they said in unison, "I'll go first." Chu Qingyan felt a headache coming on. Okay. Rock, scissors, paper. Whoever wins says first. Hence, the two of them ran to the side to compare notes. After a while, Cheng Yanluo walked over with her chest puffed out, followed by Xiao who was winking at her. The winner was obvious at a glance. Cheng Yanluo was given priority. She immediately poured out her complaints about the conflict she had with Ethereal in the past 2 days. "Qingyan, you have to be the judge. The weather is so hot. Why can't he let me eat ice? He won't even let me drink iced plum soup. How can he be so petty? Also, you know that my favorite food is Westlake hairy crabs. Coincidentally, the Mid-Autumn Festival is coming soon. The hairy crabs are fresh, beautiful, and big. I'm almost drooling when I see them. However, he told the butler not to make hairy crabs for me. Tell me, is there such a person? Tell me, did water get into my head? That's why I reconciled with him. I might as well live on my own." Cheng Yanluo complained for half an incense stick's worth of time, but she was still not satisfied. She loved to eat, but that guy Morong kept denying her the chance to eat. This was worse than being dismembered. Chu Qingyan roughly understood what she meant, but it sounded like she was angry. For the time being, she did not comment. She turned to Xiao who had been waiting impatiently for a long time and asked, "What about you? What's wrong with you?" Finally, it was her turn. Xiao immediately pushed Cheng Yanluo to the side and began to complain. "Qingyan, let me tell you, that miser is really stingy. I asked him to buy some servants for the courtyard. Otherwise, I'll be the one doing the work. After I'm done, I still have to take care of the house. Do you think it's easy for me?" But he didn't agree. "Don't you think it's infuriating? Also, I went to the clothing store to get a set of clothes the day before yesterday. He said the fabric was too thin and did not let me wear it. Look, there are so many girls on the street who wear this. Why can't I wear it? Also, Chu Qingyan listened to the two's complaints for 2 whole hours. She held her forehead and finally raised her hand to stop the two's endless complaints. The two immediately stopped talking and looked at her with a sincere expression. Xiao said, "Qingyan, you and His Highness are the perfect example of a couple. I've never seen you quarrel with His Highness before. I'm so envious. What's so good about a husband? Quickly teach me." Cheng Yanluo also looked at her with a face full of curiosity. "How can there be no quarrels between lovers? Although the two of us usually quarrel on a small scale and seem to live a smooth life, when we quarrel, no one can stop us." Thinking about how she ran away from home when the two of them had a disagreement, now that she thought about it, she felt that she was really too childish. But at that time, it was such a heart-wrenching matter. How could she not be angry? Now, looking at her two friends who were distressed and sweet because of love, she rested her chin on one hand and held the teacup in the other. She calmly sipped her tea while her eyes darted around, thinking of a solution. In order to prevent the two of them from complaining to her when they came to the prince's residence in the future, she felt that she had to use a big trick to let them solve their small problems by themselves. Actually, the two of them also need a bit of skill to get along. What kind of skill? Quickly tell us. The two of them immediately came closer, their faces full of curiosity. Once again, they spoke in unison. This is a well-tested skill in life. It's specially used to cure all kinds of irritation and anxiety. Listen carefully. Chu Qingyan laughed mischievously, and then said wittily to the beat of the beat. When your child makes you angry, please calm down and silently recite, "Biological, biological, biological." Follow me. Follow me. Follow me. When your husband makes you angry, please calm down and recite, I chose. I chose. I chose. Serves you right. Serves you right. Serves you right. When your friend makes you angry, please calm down and recite, I taught you. I taught you. I taught you. Blind. 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 When your wife makes you angry, please calm down and recite, I love her. I love her. I love her. Spoiled. 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 Attitude determines one's mood. Cheng Yanluo and Xiao were dumbfounded. No way. This is also possible. But it sounds pretty good. Seeing that the two of them had calmed down and were no longer as agitated as before, Chu Qingyan was just about to persuade them. However, at this moment, her heart inexplicably clenched, as if someone was stabbing her heart with a knife. This feeling made her very uncomfortable and somewhat familiar. She remembered that when Big Ice was injured, she had this feeling. Her whole heart was empty, as if something was about to be lost. She thought of Big Ice entering the palace today and suddenly had some conjectures in her heart. Will Big Ice be okay? At this moment, her heart returned to normal, as if what happened just now was just an illusion. General Li had arrived in the capital today. Perhaps Sichuan Emperor had called him over to let him handle the handover work. She was too sensitive, so her imagination ran wild. Freedom was close at hand. She was probably not used to the fact that something she had been yearning for so long had suddenly arrived. Chapter 1306. Qingyan, what are you thinking about? At this moment, Xiao noticed her dazed expression and nudged her with her elbow. She couldn't help but ask curiously. Chu Qingyan snapped out of her daze and met her two friends' puzzled gazes. She couldn't help but smile. I'm thinking about the things you two were complaining about earlier. I think you might have misunderstood Ethereal and Lord Lin. You have irrefutable evidence and you're still saying that we misunderstood? Qingyan, tell me, are you standing on their side? Xiao hugged her shoulders and snorted. Although Cheng Yanluo didn't speak, she looked at her suspiciously. Chu Qingyan's scalp went numb. These two were here to flaunt their affection for her. Okay, I'll dissect it for you. Chu Qingyan then looked at Cheng Yanluo, who was closest to her. I remember that ever since you got drenched in the rain, you've been in so much pain that you wish you were dead. Am I right? The person who had been called out nodded. What does that have to do with this? Chu Qingyan held her forehead. Cheng Yanluo still hadn't realized what she was talking about. Indeed, women who fell in love had 0 IQ. Do the math yourself. Isn't your period coming in a few days? Cheng Yanluo lowered her head and pondered for a moment. Then she looked up and asked blankly, how did you know? I don't know, but based on what you said just now, Ethereal must be worried that you'll feel unwell, and that you'll be in so much pain. That's why he doesn't let you touch anything cold. Moreover, your body is cold, and he's been thinking of ways to regulate your temperature. So for the sake of your health, I advise you not to touch hairy crabs or anything else. Don't even think about it. Chu Qingyan's words enlightened Cheng Yanluo. I was wondering why he was always fiddling with herbs in his room. I even blamed him for ignoring me after he won my heart. So that's why. Chu Qingyan glanced at her friend, who was both surprised and delighted at the same time. She was indeed here to flaunt her affection. After grumbling in her heart, she turned to look into her sleeve. All right, it's your turn. After listening to her friend's analysis of Yanluo, Xiaoli felt that it made sense, but Qingyan, don't try to absolve Iron Rooster. Unlike Ethereal, he didn't care about Yanluo at all. Everything he did was for himself. He didn't care about me at all. Okay. Listen to me first. Whether it's true or not, you can judge for yourself. Chu Qingyan shrugged. Xiaoli nodded. All right, even if you say a flower, I won't believe you. It was obvious that this person was still angry. All right, let's talk about the first thing. You won't be staying in the capital for long, so you don't need so many people in the courtyard. That's the first thing. The second thing is that Lord Lin's reputation and status in the capital makes people scramble for him like a flock of ducks. If you release the news that you're recruiting people, I'm afraid the people who flock to you are all harboring evil intentions. Lord Lin probably wants to ensure that the place you're living in is a little more pure, without so much deception and scheming. And the third thing. Chu Qingyan dragged out her words. Her eyes scanned her friend's face, which was gradually becoming impatient. Then she slowly continued. The third thing is even simpler. Nowadays, which mistress of a household doesn't want their husband to be accompanied by only male servants? They don't want any female creatures to get close to them. You, on the other hand, always want more people to serve you. Lord Lin is a gentleman and won't have any dirty thoughts. But can you guarantee that those maidservants will be as calm as still water in front of Lord Lin, who is as handsome as a tree in the wind? Please, in the entire capital, who wouldn't want to pounce on Lord Lin after hearing his taboo name? Your Lord Lin has been guarding you day and night, but he didn't expect a thief like you to appear. You still have the nerve to come crying to me. Are the tears you're shedding now because of water in your brain? Chu Qingyan's angry words amused Chengyan Luo. She had thought that the little girl had cultivated her moral character in the past 2 years, but she didn't expect her to be so witty. Xiao puffed up her cheeks. She had to admit that Qingyan's words were very reasonable, but she still wanted to be stubborn. Then what about the clothes? How do you explain that? Chu Qingyan knew that she had listened to her, but she still wanted to struggle for a while. Fine, she would satisfy her. Xiao Li, you're usually quite smart. Why did you drop the ball at such a critical moment? She shook her head and continued. I've seen the clothes sold outside. They're light and elegant, and indeed very breathable. It's fine to wear them normally. But the reason why your Lord Lin doesn't let you wear them is that he's jealous. He has a strong possessive desire for you and doesn't want you to walk in the crowd in such skimpy clothes. He feels that every man who looks at you, he wants to kill them. This was the first time she had explained something so bluntly. But if she didn't say it, she was afraid that Xiao was an emotional idiot who couldn't understand Lord Lin's deep love hidden in the details. After hearing this, Xiao was unexpectedly silent. She carefully thought about it, and slowly pondered in the direction that her good friend had given her. So he doesn't let me into the kitchen to cook not because he dislikes my cooking, but because I scalded my fingers the last time? He said that if we want to have children in the future, it doesn't matter how many we have, but it's best if one of them is a boy. So it's not because he values boys over girls and doesn't like daughters, but because he doesn't want no one to inherit our family business in the future. Our daughter has to dress up as a man and run around tirelessly like me? Xiao sat at the side and muttered to herself. Her eyes slowly moistened. Chu Qingyan and Chengyan Luo looked at each other and smiled. This idiot. If she were to reveal all of this idiot would probably never understand the deep love that Lord Lin had for her. Ah. I'm going back. Xiao suddenly cried out in surprise. Why are you in such a hurry? Chengyan Luo asked in surprise. At this time, Xiao had already stood up from the chair, and looked back at her good friends with a smile. Yes, I still want to try cooking. If I don't have to run around in the future, I want to wash my hands and make soup for him. Saying this, she raised her bright smile and waved her hand before walking away with light steps. Chu Qingyan face-bombed. As expected, you're all here to spread dog food. That's enough. Chengyan Luo pursed her lips and smiled. Don't you see how miserable we are because of you and His Highness? You can't stand it after this one time? Have you ever considered our feelings? Just as she was about to refute, she saw a figure hurrying through the curtain of rain and heading straight for them. Isn't that Hualing? Why is he carrying someone? Who is it? Chengyan Luo looked at the curtain of rain and couldn't help but feel puzzled. At this time, Chu Qingyan's heart thumped. Could it be that there was a change in the plan? Chapter 1307. As she got closer, Chu Qingyan immediately recognized the woman lying in Hualing's arms, even though she was in such a sorry state that she could not recognize her face. Just as she was in a daze, Hualing had already brought the people in front of her. She was in a sorry state and was covered in wounds. He knelt heavily on the ground, his eyes filled with self-blame. Young Princess Consort, It's this subordinate's incompetence that caused the princess to fall off the cliff after being seriously injured. Chu Qingyan returned to her senses and immediately knelt down on one knee. She reached out to brush away the dirt on her face, her voice trembling slightly. Zhijing, how did you become like this? She didn't dare to touch other parts of her body, afraid that this body covered in wounds wouldn't be able to withstand her touch. She was a little dazed, but very quickly, she felt a weak breath. Her eyes immediately widened. Yanluo, quick, help me save her. Cheng Yanluo had been scrutinizing Pang Zhijing the moment she entered the room. When she heard Pang Zhijing calling her, she immediately walked over and pressed her hands gently on Pang Zhijing's body. Her face darkened as she did so. She was stabbed in the chest, but it wasn't fatal. However, she fell from a high place and suffered many fractures. Not only that, she lost a lot of blood and fell into a deep coma. Her life could be in danger at any time. But this is only on the surface. The specific injuries still need to be examined. Lass, prepare a clean room and servants. I need to do a thorough examination. Cheng Yanluo's words made Chu Qingyan's face turn pale, but she forced herself to remain calm. At this time, she was everyone's pillar of support, so she had to remain calm. All right, Huling, don't say anything else. Send her to the room first. Yes. After Xining and Jasper helped Pang Zhijing wash her body and change her into a clean set of clothes, the tears that Xining had been holding back gushed out with a wah. There wasn't a single part of her body that wasn't injured. Her entire body was covered in blood. How much blood could a person shed like this? This kind of princess was so pitiful, it made one's heart ache. Even Jasper, who was used to seeing life and death, couldn't help but turn her eyes red when she saw this scene. Chu Qingyan stood in front of the bed and looked at the person who was as pale as a sheet of paper. Her whole heart felt like it was being squeezed by someone's hand. It was so uncomfortable that she could not breathe. The person who stood in front of her and laughed happily was now lying motionless in front of her, covered in wounds. It was as if someone had cruelly plucked a fresh flower and ravaged it. That kind of devastation made one's heart ache. Yanluo, you have to save her no matter what. Please. At this time, Pang Zhijing walked to her side. She grabbed her hand and begged with red eyes. Apart from the people around her, it was rare to see the little lass in such a sorrowful state. Cheng Yanluo couldn't help but turn to look at the person on the bed. Then she looked at her again and said, "All right, I'll do my best." Actually, she wasn't very confident. This kind of injury was too serious, so serious that she might not be able to make it through the night. But she couldn't bear to see the little girl so sad, so she tried her best. "Thank you, Yanluo." Chu Qingyan held her hand tightly. Cheng Yanluo patted her hand and said, "Don't say so much. You all go out. Jasper and Xining stay to help me." Knowing that she needed absolute silence to treat her injury, she didn't dare to delay and immediately left with the others. As soon as she went out, she saw Huling standing by the pillar with his head bowed, looking upset and remorseful. Hearing the sound of the door closing, Huling raised his head and said, "Little Princess Consort." Chu Qingyan had already restrained the grief on her face and walked towards Huling. "Huling, don't blame yourself. Whatever happened, it wasn't what we wanted to see. Tell me, what exactly happened?" Huling felt the warmth and encouragement in the little princess's eyes and his eyes stung. He then told her everything that happened, no matter how big or small. "At that time, we went to pick up the princess according to plan. But for some reason, the princess suddenly said that she had something to deal with and asked us to wait for her outside the city. Looking at her appearance, she was very anxious, so this subordinate lent her a horse. But after thinking about it, he was very worried. After the others drove the carriage to the relay station, he ordered them to wait outside the city. He followed the direction Pang Zhijing left in to find her. First, he wanted to protect her, and second, he wanted to prevent her from getting lost. However, he didn't expect Pang Zhijing to go to Fengtai Mountain. That place was some distance away from the capital. He was puzzled, but he immediately rushed over. But when he arrived, he happened to see a group of people impersonating Xiao like cavalry fighting with a group of people. He was very shocked. At this time, there were actually people who dared to impersonate them to do evil? When he recognized that the people who were stopped were Li Weiyuan and his group, he was even more shocked. At this juncture, the imperial court officials were stopped and killed under their name. If His Majesty mistakenly thought that it was his master's order, he would definitely think that his master was unwilling to hand over the military power, and used a trick. The deep meaning behind this made people tremble. So he immediately sent out a signal to Water Spirit, telling her to immediately send people to investigate. When he found that he had lost track of Pang Zhijing, he searched for a while before finding traces of a carriage on another shortcut. He immediately followed it. However, when this subordinate arrived, I heard another group of people say that the princess fell off the cliff. This subordinate didn't believe it, but after finding the princess hairpin and a piece of torn sleeve, this subordinate had no choice but to believe it. However, this subordinate immediately sent out a signal to bring people to the bottom of the cliff to search. I also sent people to invite Bai Yutong and the others over, letting them use the smell of the things the princess left behind to search. In the end, we finally found the princess. Although she was covered in injuries, she was still breathing. This subordinate didn't dare delay and immediately brought her back. Chu Qingyan quietly listened to Hualing's words, and her eyes once again became misty. She walked forward and placed her hand on Hualing's shoulder in front of his shocked gaze. With Zhijing's personality, no one can stop her once she makes a decision. Don't blame yourself or regret it. You've already done very well. No matter what, you've helped me save her life, so I should be the one thanking you. She didn't know why Zhijing would risk her life to leave the city, but she could imagine how dangerous the situation was. With her personality, although she normally didn't care about anything, once she made a decision, it would be like leaving Xiao. Even 8 horses wouldn't be able to pull her back, not to mention this kind of thing, so Hualing couldn't stop her at all. Moreover, she was very clear on how dangerous the bottom of Fengtai Mountain was. His injuries were enough to see a few things. Luckily, he was smart and knew to ask Glutinous Riceball and the others for help. Animals had a naturally sensitive sense of smell, not to mention the snow wolves. Chapter 1308. Young Princess Consort. Hualing raised his head, his eyes filled with disbelief. Young Princess Consort didn't blame him. Anyone with a discerning eye could see how much young Princess Consort liked the Southern Song Princess. She had even risked her life to rescue her from the capital. On the way back, he had prepared himself to bear the young Princess Consort's anger, but she had comforted him instead. Chu Qingyan looked at the stunned man in front of her and her gaze softened. Hualing, I understand Zhijing. Since she has made a decision, she won't listen to anyone. I think she has already prepared herself to bear the consequences of today's events. All we can do is to assist from the side. You don't need to feel too pressured. It's not your fault that the plan failed. Just now, Hualing had mentioned that he had found Xiaoho's carriage at the edge of the cliff. This proved that Zhijing had suddenly left in order to find Xiaoho. Although she didn't know what had happened or what kind of conspiracy was behind it, it was enough to tell that this matter was extremely dangerous. However, Zhijing had still left without hesitation. It was obvious that she cared about Xiaoho more than she had imagined. Hualing's eyes glistened with tears. You're also injured. Go back and treat it. Otherwise, when His Highness comes looking for you and sees that you're injured, how can I explain it? She patted his shoulder and joked. Hualing looked at her deeply, then nodded heavily. He clutched the wound on his shoulder and turned to leave. Chu Qingyan looked at Hualing's back as he left. She sighed in her heart. Big Ice Cube had such a group of loyal subordinates. It was one of his few blessings in his life. They had done their best to get to this point. How could she bear to blame them? At this moment, the sound of footsteps could be heard. She looked in the direction of the sound, and saw Ethereal quickly walking over with a medicine box. Young Princess Consort, this subordinate heard your summons and immediately rushed over. Ethereal said, panting. Good, he's inside. Yanluo is also inside. Quickly go in. Ethereal did not dare to delay. She nodded and pushed the door open. Chu Qingyan clenched her fists and looked at the closed door with hope in her eyes. Zhijing, so many of us want you to live. You can't let us down. At the same time, Turin and Water Spirit also appeared in the courtyard. The two of them walked quickly to her side. Why are you here? Shouldn't he be waiting for your highness outside the palace? When she saw Turin, Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Is his highness back? No, master hasn't come out of the palace yet. This subordinate saw the signal sent by the water spirit, and thought that something must have happened, so this subordinate immediately came back. On the way, this subordinate also met water spirit. Turin quickly explained. He also wanted to wait for his master outside the palace. As a secret guard, he had always been by his master's side. However, because his master had ordered him to ensure the young princess consort's safety if anything happened, he immediately rushed back when he saw the signal. But don't worry, young princess consort. This subordinate left a portion of the secret guards outside the palace. Seeing the young princess frown and worry in her eyes, Turin added this sentence. Chu Qingyan sighed softly in her heart. Couldn't the big ice cube be more considerate of her? She was in the prince's residence and had so many people protecting her. What did he have to worry about? Although this was what she thought, they were already here. She could not say anything. Thus, she turned to the two of them and said, "All right, there are too many people here. Let's go to the study." Turin and Water Spirit nodded and followed her to the study. After the study's door was closed, Chu Qingyan sat down at the head of the table. She looked up at Water Spirit with a stern gaze. I have heard the general situation from the Fire Spirit, but what is going on? Why would someone impersonate the Xiao cavalry to assassinate General Li? Water Spirit stood up with a serious expression. Young Princess Consort, after receiving the report from the Fire Spirit, this subordinate sent the elite of the Pigeon Feather Cavalry to Fengtai Mountain to investigate. We found that those impersonators were not there to assassinate General Li. Their target was the third prince, Prince Yi. However, General Li returned to the capital. So General Li's men helped the third prince to fight against the enemy. This created a misunderstanding that the person they were targeting was General Li, but it was actually Prince Yi. At this point, Chu Qingyan finally understood why Zijing had suddenly left the city. She must have known that Prince Yi was in danger. That was why she chose to leave at such a critical moment. It was equivalent to giving up her freedom. This subordinate also found several corpses above the cliff where Princess Nansong fell. They were all killed by a sword through their throats. However, what was suspicious was that this subordinate checked their corpses and found that they were not on the same side as the impersonators, General Li, or Prince Yi. According to the Fire Spirit, these people were still alive before he went to the bottom of the cliff. Later, when the Pigeon Feather Cavalry arrived, they were already dead. It can be speculated that these people were the ones who forced Princess Nansong off the cliff. Water Spirit reported all the information she had. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan's frown deepened. In this case, there were 4 groups of people on the Phoenix Terrace at that time. Besides Xiao Ho and General Li, you must investigate the other 2 groups and find out who is behind them. For the first group, you must investigate the people around Xiao Ho. See if he has offended anyone, and who is currently opposing His Highness. The impersonators of Xiao Li's cavalry had obvious motives. Other than using Big Ice Cube to get rid of Xiao Ho, they also wanted to make Big Ice Cube a scapegoat. The first was to find a scapegoat to wash off suspicion. The second was to target Big Ice Cube. Their intentions were murderous. If this spread out, the imperial court and the common people would think that it was Big Ice Cube who killed his brother. The other group was obviously targeting Zijing. On Zijing's side, check her connections and find out who's trying to deal with her. No matter what, we will not take the blame. Chu Qingyan gave several orders, and Water Spirit accepted them one by one. Turin, wait outside the palace. After such a big thing happened, I am very worried about His Highness's safety. But Master asked me to stay by your side to protect you, Turin said hesitantly. She rarely spoke in a tough tone. His Highness is not in the palace right now. Listen to my orders for now. This is an order. You must obey it. Turin knew what she meant and did not refuse. He nodded and agreed. I understand. After Turin left, Chu Qingyan still wanted to say something to Water Spirit, but she was puzzled when she saw the strange look in her eyes. Little princess, I used to think that master was the backbone of Xiao Lai's cavalry. If one day he is not here or something happens to him, what should we do? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but murmur, Water Spirit you. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.